to the students.
Welcome to the March 3rd, 2015 meeting of the Sammamish City Council. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Tom Van.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kathy Huckabee. Councilmember Don Jaron.
Here.
Councilmember Bob Keller.
Present.
Councilmember Tom O'Dell.
Here.
Councilmember Ramiro Valderrama.
Present.
Councilmember Nancy Whitten.
Deputy Mayor Huckabee is away on family business. Do you have a motion to excuse? In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I ask our former mayor, Tom O'Dell, to lead us?
2 or 3 get nervous.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, and that would include the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. Anything?
Yes, I move to amend to remove the appointment of the alternate
You want to remove the, that would be item number,
on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, Nancy, is your mic on? I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. I move to remove from the consent, I guess I don't have to move.
no.
I just request that we remove from the consent agenda Resolution 3, please.
Okay. Number 3, and we'll put that, well, I guess we could do that just before public hearings.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move that to become number 7A or something like that.
Or if I can just make a comment, I'll let it go at that. And put it
You can make a comment now if that's all
Okay,
it is.
I just had a concern about one of the applicants for the Parks Commission who is affiliated with a company that does business with the city, and I don't think there's any conflict, but I'm always ultra-conservative in that regard, and that's my only concern. So I just
Okay.
wanted to make that a record, and otherwise...
I think you made that point earlier too, so.
I did, so I'm,
Okay.
other than that, I'm leave it on the consent agenda, and I'll consent with that concern noted.
Okay. So it's back on the consent agenda.
Correct, thank you.
Mr. City Manager?
I just want to let the council know we do have a long executive session tonight, so I anticipate it's probably hour plus when we're done with it. Just give you a little heads up.
We've got about maybe 2 or 3 different issues
Yes,
down there under those
multiple issues.
categories. So, okay. All right. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the complete agenda and consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Tonight, we don't have a student liaison tonight, I believe. Nope. We do have a presentation to start. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all of our guests here tonight. Thank you for attending. I'm sure you have better things to do, but this is a very interesting topic for you, and thank you for taking your time to come over here. I want to thank everybody, including my dentist in the way back that all these years has been giving me the pain and agony. John, good to see you. We have guests here tonight from King County to give us a presentation. I don't want to take too much thunder out of my Public Works Director, so I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director, Laura Philpott, perhaps to do some introductory comments and then to introduce the guest from the King County. Laura?
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Council. At the February 17th meeting, staff was asked to bring back a more comprehensive update to the East Lake Sammamish Trail project. I'm happy to report that the county was able to attend tonight to help provide that detailed update. And the director, the county's Parks Director, Kevin Brown, is here tonight to do so. But before I turn it over to Mr. Brown, I wanted to provide a few key points, pieces of information. First of all, I wanted to remind the council that in December, our city manager and legislative committee met with the King County Executive's office, and it was a very productive meeting. At that meeting, the King County Executive office made a commitment to be more flexible and to provide context-sensitive design on the southern section of the trail that had not yet started construction. Mr. Brown was also at that meeting. After that meeting, we did have an example where there was a tree. This is just one example to show there was a tree on the northern section, a section that was not discussed at the executive meeting, that was in danger of being removed as part of the construction. Our city manager contacted Mr. Brown, and they were able to save that tree. Again, showing some flexibility and showing that the staff did hear that direction. There was a mistake by the county's design team, and their 90% plans were released without addressing comments made by the city and citizens during the 60% review process. After the meeting on February 17th, our mayor sent a letter to the King County Exec's office. I believe you've all had a copy, and there are extra copies on the table, sharing the disappointment that those 90% plans were issued before addressing the comments made by city staff and by our residents. On February 27th, last Friday, the executive, Dow Constantine, replied and provided a letter. That letter has been provided to each of you in front of you this evening. There's also extra copies on the table of that letter as well. And in that letter, the county acknowledges the mistakes they made by issuing the 90% plans. They also, to their credit, again, acknowledged the mistake, but they also committed to producing a 95% design plan. And this is not industry standard. I just want to be clear that the typical process for designing a project is 30% plans are developed, 60% plans are developed, 90%, and then final plans. The county has acknowledged their mistake, and they're willing to produce 95% plans so that they can more properly address the comments made by the city at the end of October last year, as well as the various residents' comments. In addition, this will provide the city and residents another opportunity to provide comment and to review those plans before they are finalized. In addition, per the city manager's direction, Mr. Brown and I personally walked the South A portion of the trail, also known as 2A, parcel by parcel on February 19th. We had the city comments in hand, the ones that that were provided to the county in October, and we went through each comment. We also looked at other issues along the way. Some examples that came from that meeting I think are very positive is that the county is willing to make some adjustments to alignment by moving the trail to the east to save trees. Some of the ways they're able to accomplish this is through encroaching as tightly as they can on existing wetland buffers and using mitigation as a method to address that. They also are willing to move or fill jurisdictional ditches rather than avoid them to save trees. And they've also tightened up the construction clearing limits significantly. Another big win, I see it as we discussed on the site distance, rather than removing trees, limbing them up. This is also a comment that's been made by some of our residents as well. The evergreen trees, by removing low vegetation and removing branches rather than removing the entire tree. There's also been a number of concerns about drainage coming off the parkway onto the trail and onto residents that exist today. And myself and Mr. Brown discussed partnering between the city and the county to make sure that those are addressed in the final design of this project. A copy of the city's comments, along with King County's responses to them, was provided to the council last Friday. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look through those. With that, I know that Mr. Brown is planning to provide a presentation this evening and provide a lot more detail about some of those particular comments and adjustments they're planning to make. And as the city manager mentioned, I don't want to take the thunder out of his presentation. So I will turn it over to Mr. Brown at this point and ask him to step through his presentation.
And Kevin, maybe you can introduce your team when you're there.
I
thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight and give an update sort of where we are with this project. I want to start with a little bit of history with this particular corridor. In 1971, we sort of developed a trails plan, and at that time we identified all the priority projects and corridors within the county that would make a sort of interconnected network of trails, and it would include the East Lake Sammamish Trail at that time. But it wasn't actually until 1998 that we were able to acquire the corridor. Then it took about 5 years to get through a public planning process, and then in 2006, the actual interim trail did open. The last couple of years, we've done construction in the north, in Redmond, and also in Issaquah. We've opened those segments, those paved segments. And then last year, 2014, we started construction on phase 1 of North Sammamish. And today we're here to talk about phase 2A, which is scheduled to open for construction hopefully later this year. A little bit about what we do in King County. We have sort of 2 core missions as a regional open space provider and a regional trails provider. It's kind of hard to read this map, but what it does show is we've got about 175 miles of regional trails throughout the county of a proposed 300 trails. How this corridor looks today. We've talked about this corridor as a 44-mile stretch from Golden Gardens on the Puget Sound in Seattle all the way up to Issaquah, Preston, as this contiguous segment here that would provide for numerous types of activities. Interestingly, the really big picture, and what I think is really incredible, is that this particular trail segment is part of a much, much larger trail system that you can actually go from the Puget Sound all the way to Ellensburg, if one was so inclined to do so. A little bit of background, as mentioned, we have several phases in this particular project, 5 in particular. We were able to complete the Redmond segment in 2011, the Issaquah segment in 2013. We're under construction in North Sammamish, and then we have 2 phases, South Sammamish 2A and South Sammamish 2B. Why do we develop trails, and how do we develop them? We develop trails for people of all ages and abilities for all types of activities, whether they be your mom with her stroller, someone walking their dog, someone jogging, folks that provide accessible trails, families out there enjoying a bike ride. We've got trails all over the county, again here showing some of the different uses, whether it might be inline skating or just enjoying it on a nice spring summer day. Here's an example of one of the challenges we're facing in terms of trail width. A lot of folks travel the trail as a family. Here you'll see an individual in a wheelchair and their family with them, and the bicyclist going the other way. These are the things that we're constantly thinking about as we're developing trails for all folks to enjoy. So now I'm going to slow down a little bit and talk a bit about some of the community outreach to date. We started this process in 2014, March 2014, with 4 open houses. And on the far left bottom side, you'll see sort of those invitations. And we had mailed out newsletters to 1,800 different addresses. And the purpose of the meetings were to talk about pre-design and to get feedback and concerns from the community. At those meetings, we had about 110 people attend. 140 comments were submitted, and at that time, all the comments did receive a response. Following up on that, between July and August, we had 5 community meetings on the trail. And the purpose here was to talk about preliminary design on the ground, meeting with the community on the trail so they could get a better feel for what was happening out there. And again, we had sent out another 1,800 newsletters. At these meetings, we had roughly 50 people attend. We did get 11 comments, and we did provide responses at that time regarding those comments. Again, how are we engaging the public? We have flyers that are sent out, pretty much on a regular basis. We've had almost 300 on-site meetings with residents during design and construction, and this is for both north and south. We've received over 1,000 hotline and email responses. Again, those newsletters and mailings are going out to a list of roughly 2,000 folks. We've provided informational materials and frequently asked questions guidelines. On the right-hand side, you'll see one of the concerns or questions we got is some of this seems pretty technical, and so we've designed a FAQ to help folks understand what some of that technical data was included in the plan. And then at major milestones, we were putting press releases out as well. We had all those meetings out there, and I think that's one of the big issues is what type of public outreach took place, and what did you hear from county? There were numerous themes that came up during these meetings and interactions with folks. Again, landscaping and trees, other issues that were brought up, privacy, protecting the natural environment, sound and visual barriers, blocked views. With respect to trail safety, ensuring that intersections and crossings, provided safety for everybody. Ability for the county to enforce the trail speed limit and identify rules of the trail were important. Other issues that came up were making sure that emergency response was priority, preserving the parking for adjacent homeowners, and making more trail access points along the corridor. Third, both narrow the trail and widen the trail. Restrooms need to be implemented.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, and I apologize for that one. It looks like our wireless microphone is not working. Is it possible that I can move you to staff table here so that you can continue with that? We're getting some comments, text messages, folks watching this from home. So if you don't mind just continuing from the staff table, that will be wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Sorry about this technical difficulty, folks. Just apologize.
So I think one of the big questions is, okay, a lot of public outreach, comments were made, and they were made along these lines. These were the key themes. But what actually happened to those comments? How did the county listen to what we had to say? How were they incorporated in things moving forward? Let me figure my slide. There we go. So early on, when we had the open house meetings, those comments were incorporated into the 60% design. From the trail meeting comments, those were incorporated to the more recent 90% design, as well as the shoreline permit comments that came in. Those were also included in the 90% design. Some of the comments, some examples of how those comments were included were the trail alignment and trees, shifting the trail to preserve trees, intersections and trees, limbing up trees to, again, provide sight distance and safety, but still keeping vegetation in place. One of the big pieces that we updated was retaining walls instead of fill walls. This again allowed trees to stay there and it preserved parking. Landscaping, we have a very robust landscaping plan that has thousands of new plants included as part of this update. We're relocating a ditch in order to shift the trail alignment eastward, and again, that allows for preservation of more trees. Preserving existing board fence, that was a priority, that maintains privacy and again, avoided tree removal in the corridor. And a special request from Alexander's on the Lake was they have several monuments and some vegetation, preserving those monuments and the ability to again put in that vegetation when the project is completed. And then at Southeast 33rd, a request to remove a sidewalk that had been proposed. So these are just some of the examples of what happened when the comments did come in, and as we updated our plans that we included them. So much has been said about what has happened with respect to the city's comments that came in, I believe, in October of last year, we were seeking comments. The city provided comments on October 24th. We did, unfortunately, had a delay in receiving them. But what we've really tried to do is sort of make up for time. During that period, there were 25 individuals and agencies that did comment in October. The city's comments, which we finally received on December, I think, 17th from the Department of Permitting and Environmental Regulation, contains 26 comments. And we've been working over the last several weeks on addressing those comments. 16 were related to trees, landscaping, and screening. Others were in areas such as sight distance, stop signs, sidewalks, and drainage. And as Laura indicated earlier, we are very committed to, again, coming back with an updated set of design plans at 95% to show those changes that we've committed to. So what were those changes generally, and what does it look like on the ground? In this first top left slide, many of those trees were identified for removal just because they're at a sort of sight distance and within the clearing zone. We're preserving those trees. Towards the intersection, we're going to be limbing them up, so we still have sight distance for cars coming in and out, but again, preserving some vegetation and screening there. Along the corridor, there were several locations where there were other trees that had been identified for removal. Some of those were within the clearing and grading limits. Others were trees that we identified that, the health probably was not great at this point and just recommended for removal during the project. We've gone back and said, hey, let's continue to monitor all those trees and identify as we move forward how best to address any issues that might come up with construction. Additionally, we took a look at some of the screening, some of the hedges, again, trees and intersections, ensuring that sight lines were maintained, but privacy still was an issue that was taken into consideration. We're working with the city very closely on the issue of sight lines. It's something that's very important to ensure both safety and protection for motorists coming across the trail as well as trail users. And we want to ensure that all folks that are indeed crossing the trail have a safe crossing to make. Here, a couple of examples. This area right here, it's a very long stretch of the trail where there's a steep embankment. And there's currently some parking down here. We were originally going to have 2 linear walls here. We've shifted to 1 wall in which we'll open up. There'll be parking and more space for emergency access through here. That was a high priority. And you can see it a little bit more along this line where we'll be providing a little bit more space for parking at the base of here. Preserving fencing, again, this fence and trees were a priority to be preserved. And then over here, where there is space to shift the alignment east to avoid removal of any landscaping on that side. A couple of other areas that we identified, again, the monuments that are located in this area and actually just off the screen, preserving those during construction and allowing the opportunity to come back and put in plantings through here. There was a proposed sidewalk that we took out at the request of the community and city. Enhanced landscaping that's going on.
I'm sorry, Kevin, you said you took that out on the request of who?
As I understood, it was the city and community.
Okay.
enhanced landscaping. There will be a tremendous amount of trees, shrubs, bushes, vegetation planted in this project. In this particular area, this ditch right here, we're working with the Corps to shift that so we can preserve this long row of trees right here. And again, in several areas along the corridor, limbing up trees instead of removing them, again, to preserve site distances and provide screening. And again, there are several different areas that we're continuing to work with the city. Again, I mentioned the site distances where we're identifying the best site triangle to ensure that folks coming out of here, looking up across, can see, whether anyone's crossing, and the same way with trail users. The stop sign at 206, we're continuing to study that issue. Drainage coming down from the parkway in this location and several others, working with the city on that. And as mentioned several times, we are looking at preserving many, many trees as part of this update. One of the reasons they had been called for removal is when we get into construction and we're looking at, roots, root balls, and how they impact which direction they basically go. We want to work on a protocol for when, large roots are crossing the trail or when construction, we might be damaging root systems. We want to work with the city in terms of, hey, let's take a closer look, have staff come out, and we'll work on that issue on each individual tree that's been identified for preservation. So in summary, there were 26 comments that came from the city's recent letter. 17 were in resolution. 5, we've sort of met halfway. There are 4 areas that we're continuing to collaborate on. I guess, as mentioned, we're going to update our plans. We will continue our bi-weekly meetings with the city staff. We'll continue the public outreach, newsletters, the live hotline, and we have on-site meetings. We do have a dedicated staff person who's out working with the community 2 days a week and is open anytime folks want to talk. So while I'm here, I wanted to give sort of a quick update on what's happening up in the north. Phase 1 is sort of nearing completion. There's a paved section of the north segment right here. We're looking to remove some ramps right here, which has delayed us a little bit. In this particular project, we have several passable culverts that we're installing. Again, landscaping, tree, fencing, installation, and we anticipate that this will be completed in April or May. Mentioned earlier as part of 2A, working with the community, working with neighbors, and some of the issues that come up and where we've been able to work with individual property owners on issues or projects. We were able to identify, this tree originally was proposed for removal. It is staying there. Originally in this area, it was part of the clearing and grading area to support that wall. We actually pushed it over a little bit. We saved a tree and a fountain and created parking, gravel parking behind there. We moved a retaining wall and saved tree and landscaping in this particular project. We're going to also go back and re-landscape there. And we redesigned stairs to run parallel to the trail. These are just a couple of the examples. A couple more that we're continuing to work on and have worked on. As we worked through construction, this particular intersection, we found that cars were bottoming out. We did make an immediate fix on this right here. Short term, we're working on a redesign for a long-term solution right there. This particular fence location, we had a permit for crossing here. There was later a fence that unfortunately got installed. However, it's impeded the sight distance from the neighbors, and we've heard some concerns about that. So we're working with the property owner there. Retaining walls, again, instead of fill, we put retaining walls to, again, provide more space for re-landscaping here, and retaining walls to provide better access for vehicles crossing the trail in this particular segment. So that's the north. Obviously, moving into the next phase 2B, there's lots of design challenges. And, good reason, there's lots of concerns moving forward that we have heard. Again, preserving trees, parking challenges, landscaping, protecting streams and wetlands. We know there's a long road in front of us in terms of working with both the city and community on these issues. So we want to make sure that folks know that we're committed towards that. Here's an area in the Issaquah segment where we had an existing bridge that we needed to, work with, and where we were flexible to narrowing it to that existing bridge. So again, working on areas of flexibility moving forward as we get into 2B. Again, community outreach, still a priority for us. I'll leave this up at the end of the presentation, but just want to show the ways to get in touch with our folks, whether it be email, hotline, on Facebook or our blog. There's numerous opportunities sort of to reach out. So where are we going at this point? Again, next steps are to update our redesign based on comments that folks have made, commitments we've made. We'll continue our bi-weekly meetings that we do have with city staff, continuing that public outreach, the communication pieces, and then we're working towards construction of 2A in the summer of 2015. So with that, that sort of concludes my presentation and questions.
Okay. Do we have any, let me make sure my system is on here. Do we have any questions? First, Mr. City Manager, you want to conclude?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Actually, no, I think I don't have any more to add, but I do have a little logistic problems here that when you're done with perhaps asking your questions to Kevin, I'd like us to take about a maybe 5 minutes break so I can have the IT folks fix that mic there, because we have some public sign up to speak here, so I want to make sure that they're on the record properly.
Okay.
So,
Well, let's do the questions then. Nobody interested? Okay, Councilmember Valderrama.
Kevin, thank you for coming out here. I appreciate you and Monica and the team coming out, especially on a relatively short notice on that. I also want to give my thanks to the county executive for being sensitive enough to send that letter to us, and the deputy executive. I am curious, when we talk about the 95% plan, when can we expect that 95% plan?
We're looking at, I believe, mid-April for that.
Mid-April?
And I'll ask my team to correct me if I'm...
All right. And for the comments that you gave a spreadsheet replying to the comments of the city, actually this is more towards Laura, was that shared with the citizens prior to this meeting, or is it available at this meeting?
No, that has not been made public yet.
Because that would be advantageous to make a richer discussion from the citizens when they get that information coming forward as they're going in. As I started to look over those, I did have a couple of questions that stood out to me. And first of all, I want to thank you for, you've been more flexible as you've been talking about here. You've recognized that there are ditches on the east side of the trail. So that's a big movement of the needle that we appreciate out there. How much of the east side is now being considered ditches versus wetlands? Can you give us an approximation?
You've asked me a really difficult question. You know, the reason behind that is, you know, King County Parks and King County, those are not wetlands that we sort of identify and regulate. At some point in time, a wetland biologist comes out and has taken a look at those particular areas and has identified those as wetlands. And I believe that, you know, as part of that, the city has identified, you know, those as part of ones that they regulate. And I'll ask Laura to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are wetlands that have been in a sensitive areas folio for a long time, and we don't have the discretion to say that they're not wetlands. There's mitigation that you could potentially do if you enter a wetland buffer or alter a wetland, but we don't have the discretion to recharacterize a body as a wetland from a ditch. There is one area where it's considered a jurisdictional ditch, which the Corps of Engineers has authority over. We've worked with them on the relocation of that ditch in particular, so we're able to shift the trail over to the east.
I know that Senator Andy Hill has reached out to the head of ecology to look at the wetlands. I assume that they've been in contact with you. As of today, I know that Senator Hill has not had a response yet, but I know it's on this issue as one of the major ones to go forward. The issue also you had mentioned about jurisdiction and sensitivities are to the trees. And previous to this discussion here, there was the estimate that 65% of the sensitive trees, in addition to some 52 heritage trees as defined by the city, and in addition to the other trees, were still in danger. Are you now looking at moving that number from 65% to what percent are we now talking of the significant?
We are definitely looking at moving that number significantly. I don't have that in front of me, but I think what it's, I work in the Department of Natural Resources and Parks, and trees are part of our natural environment and extremely critical to what we do in our projects and on our land. In 2013, we planted over almost 70,000 trees. And so I don't like to see trees removed, and we have volunteer projects on a weekly basis on our parks and trails and for replanting efforts. We can update that number and get that information to you, but I think that in the walkthroughs, I think that there's a significant difference in terms of what we're preserving in critical areas.
On the line of sight, on point number 5 of the city comments, the city had requested that the standard that be utilized for the line of sight would be the city standard of line of sight. That would make a significant difference onto it versus using those federal standards that are out there. I saw in your responses you talk about limbs, and I know that this is a discussion going forward, but do you anticipate using the city standards for line of sight?
Well, we're continuing to have that conversation, and I'm not saying we're not going to use this. What we want to find is a safe distance that we feel everybody, is in a good position when they're crossing the trail. So safety is a priority from both the city and the county. We are looking at refining that site distance, and we're still having that conversation.
I concur that we both, city and county, want the safety first and foremost. My concern is who will make that determination as to the line of sight. So will it be the two of you in the Parks Department? Will that be working together? Because I know the city has already requested and put forth their position on point number 5. So that'll be worked out amongst the two of you. Is that the current plan?
Well, we are working on it. We're coming in with an updated, some updates based on some flexibility allowed by standards, and we have not actually been able to brief the city on that particular issue quite yet. But I'm hopeful that the two of us will be able to resolve this issue. I feel confident we can.
On the point of flexibility that you had raised, and I appreciate the wording that's coming from the county executive as well as in the presentation. We obviously want to see that in the details. It's important that everyone who we've heard from on all sides wants this trail. They want it to be done respectfully for the people who live down there. They want it to be done responsibly for the environment, as you have said over there. We want it to show sensitivity for the trees that are out there, as we've mentioned here. And all of us, believe me, want it to be done quickly to get this going to use. I'm an avid user on that, and my dogs want to go back down there again as quickly as possible to go forward. And so those are important issues for all of us as we're looking. A curiosity that came up to me as we talk about many users that this trail will now be able to serve versus the functions and the expansion. Obviously, we're going to be showing some flexibility on the width, especially the shoulders, as you've been talking about here. The bridge example I thought was a good one. I am curious as to what is the anticipated number of new incremental users that will be using the expanded trail. Have you guys done a forecast of that?
We haven't done a forecast on that yet. I think one of the areas that we'll look at, I mean, obviously Issaquah, Sammamish, and Redmond are, sort of city centers, commercial centers, employment centers. Most folks for, avid, hardcore bicyclists and potentially commuters will continue to use the parkway. But we anticipate seeing more families, young kids with a better, smoother surface out there on the trail. But we have not updated numbers now.
So there's no number. Since you raised the issue of the riders on the parkway versus the trail, that raises us another significant issue, which is the parking that we're experiencing problems down there. And again, going back to respecting the property owners down there and their driveways, we have a trade-off. Either we allow them to have more parking down there, or we're putting more cars on the parkway, which is more dangerous to the heavy-duty riders who have to then go around those cars. So will there be given preference to keep as much parking down on the lakeside rather than putting it up there?
So we're looking at several parking lots as part of the longer-term project. We did develop one up in the north end. We'll be looking at a couple of more parking lots as part of the project moving forward. We've talked with the city about potential, partnerships out there, understanding that parking is a critical issue. So we do recognize that, it's important to identify specific locations where folks are sort of steered towards versus parking on the parkway or in any residential area.
Question I have also is on the drainage. You had raised the issue of the drainage and that you're going to be looking at the runoff. Obviously, that's a significant issue for us as we're going forward. Mm-hmm. How will that be handled jointly, as you'd mentioned previously? What is the thought on that?
Well, the drainage came up as a comment related to the trail, and we understand that there's a certain amount of impervious surface on the trail, but also understanding there's a great amount of water that comes off of the hillside across the parkway and down towards the lake. And it's a priority for both the city and the county to find a way to, catch and divert that runoff. And, we've, again, just started that conversation as part of our recent meetings on, how best to move forward. But there is a commitment that, this is sort of a shared responsibility, and we're at the table to help come up with a solution.
Well, hopefully it's more shared by the county, since you're taking out the trees and doing the work, so the increased runoff that we see comes down, especially in New Year's. So I expect to see that reflected in the proportionality of shared as we're looking forward to it. I do have a question, but it'll be for the attorney. Those are my questions for right now. Thank you very much again for all that you're doing here, and it'll be interesting when the comments are shared with the citizens to get a much richer discussion. Thank you.
Councilmember Keller.
Thank you. Since Councilmember Valderrama was so comprehensive in the questions that he covered a lot of areas. My focus really was at the end that you brought up about the drainage.
Yes.
The ditches. Obviously a question, are those wetlands? Are they conveyance ditches that were put out? On one of my walkthroughs on the trail, the first thing I noticed was a 2-foot culvert during a rainy area coming off the parkway down into one of those ditches, and the ditch is holding that water. And we can look at that as, is that a wetland? Has it become a wetland? But it is some sort of a retention pond, if you will. It's holding the water and infiltrating it and cleaning it before it gets to the lake. It's serving that function. So my question really relates to two things. One, from the environment, where will you move that water? Will it be tight-lined into the lake then? It's not going to be infiltrated in the future? And the second thing would be, a lot of planning and engineering would go into where that water is going to go. And while I believe that there will be responsible design of whatever you plan on doing, but there are going to be mistakes where there's going to be stormwater that is going to affect some of the homeowner owners down there. We've seen it up in the northern end of the trail already. So how responsive can you be when the trail's been open for 3 months and everybody's enjoying it? We have a rainstorm, and then after the trail is completed, that homeowner is affected by the drainage.
In the current section that we have proposed, one of the things we're installing is a retention vault, so that when large amounts of water do come across, it holds it and releases it a little bit slower than potentially it might have otherwise. I think we'll be looking at potential solutions like that moving forward.
And then what about when something doesn't work? Will the county be responsive to the homeowners afterwards?
There's, you know, we've been maintaining the corridor for many years, and, you know, these sorts of issues sort of have come up, and we've worked to see, in some cases, we've had to remove silt from some of the ditches so to allow water to flow more freely. We've had to sort of send cameras and equipment down drain lines to clear them up. So I think that those are some, you know, short-term solutions that we'll be working on a daily basis. But it will take some larger infrastructure to deal with the larger flows on a regular basis, such as a retention vault.
Great. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate the information.
Councilmember Odell.
Thank you. Kevin, thanks again for coming out to us. And you've been out here quite a bit, in fact, so often that we probably should make you an honorary resident. And seriously, since we've raised the noise level on this whole thing, in the county's defense, they have been upping the attention level here, which is good for all of us. I also want to give them credit for installing the fish passages that Kevin showed. I've been involved with the Kokanee restoration, and this is a major step forward in that. We just need to get the city to follow through on the parkway proper, and then we'll make a lot of headway here. When you and I walked on Friday, and I appreciate your coming out for that, we walked the whole trail, or at least this section. One of the things I asked about was the tree tags, which has been the subject of some discussion. Could you comment a little bit on the tree tag issue and what the tree tags really indicate? Because I think there's a misperception on the part of the public at large as to what they mean.
Sure. So as you go up and down the corridor, you'll see pretty much almost every tree that I think is larger than, I want to say, 8 inches in diameter, and I'm going to ask project folks to confirm that. But you know, over a certain size, we identified as part of this, identified in the corridor. Not that it was in the construction area, but we wanted to identify all of those that are sort of within our study of work. Of those, a subset had been identified for removal. And so if you'll see lots of tags out there, that doesn't mean that that tree was slated for removal. A subset that was identified on the plans that we have submitted to date. In walks that you know, we've had subsequently, we looked at individual trees, and again, many of those were just identified as tree number 45823 with no relevance. Others were either identified as this is within the clearing and construction zone and needs to be removed, or this might be a tree that needs to be monitored for health because the tree top is dead. Or, you know, this is something that we just, as we get further into construction, we need more information on. Okay. So there is no association between having the tag and it being removed.
No direct association, no direct correlation. Okay, thank you. We talked a little bit about the ditches as well, and that's been mentioned previously, so I won't dwell on it, but the wetland biologists who identified, even though it's man-made, their criteria for calling it a quote-unquote wetland is it does perform a wetland-type function in terms of retaining the water and allowing it to soak in. Now, where you have to actually dig into the ditch and remove it, what options are there for mitigation?
I might not have all the technical information associated with that. You know, there are different options for mitigation within the project, whether it be on-site or off-site. Whether you're in a wetland buffer and you're impacting that buffer, you'll need to do mitigation. I think that there's been discussions more recently with the Department of Permitting staff, King County staff, and city staff on looking at opportunities to do on-site mitigation within the corridor. But
And some of those that were particularly having discussions, I understand, regarding the fish passages under there are a lot of blockages there, so maybe we can use that an opportunity, and then we'll work with the King County folks to see what we can do to partner in that one.
Is there an option for using pervious surface?
I'm sorry.
Is there an option for using pervious surface to help this whole issue?
I do not know. That's I can check on that. I'll get back to you.
Probably not. It's that I believe that compacted gravel is treated as the paved asphalt on this latest requirements and regulations in terms of the impervious surface.
Okay, thank you. On tree replanting, when we walked, you mentioned that you have a large planting project planned with this project, and can you elaborate a little bit on the kinds of trees that would be replanted and also the size?
Sure. Typically in different areas where we would have different types of vegetation that would be replanted. One of the issues I think that has come up is the hedges, and we've talked to individuals about, what type of replacement hedge, if one has to come out, here are several options which are in-kind types. And so that's one. We've, in our last couple of meetings, we typically would plant our replacement trees typically are not that large, but we are looking at the opportunity to plant larger replacement trees based on the requests that did come from.
What can be a little more specific and larger?
I'll say, they're when they start out, they're maybe this big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over time, it would, yes. In terms of the site distance, I will join my fellow council member in urging you use the city criteria and not the ones that are in place. I also want to commend everyone for having common sense breakout and limiting up as opposed to removal. I think that's a good way to go. I would also encourage you, where you do have difficult situations, as we discussed in a couple places, that you look at using mirrors. I know over the Gilman Trail, there are semi-spherical mirrors that are placed at key intersections that allow people to, on both the trail and the roads, to detect conflicting traffic. Particularly at night with the headlights, it's a big help. With respect to parking, I know there's a possible parking lot being discussed across from 7-Eleven for the public. There's also the issue of who would be responsible for any parking lot issues, and also the bathrooms that may be scattered along the trail. Who's going to be maintaining those and responsible for the safety of them?
It would be King County Parks staff that would be maintaining, restrooms and parking. Again, I think there's been some preliminary conversations with city staff. Is there the ability to sort of partner on some of these projects? And at that point, we would identify roles and responsibilities if we did find it made more economic sense and worked out.
We want a partner in King County to pay 100% of everything, that the construction and maintenance.
We'll send the bill, right?
Heard that loud and clear.
Okay, the last thing I have is looking ahead to Phase 2B.
Yes.
What have we learned that we can do better on 2B?
Well, I think, as mentioned, there's lots of challenges in 2B, and I've made a commitment to several folks that myself and senior parks management are going to be very involved in this project, moving all the way through, so that there's continued coordination. Again, we have meetings every 2 weeks with city staff, and we do have folks out on the field. Their whole job is to work with community members, so we're very committed in sticking to the coordinated effort that we have in place.
Okay. This gets back to the issue of mitigation, on-site mitigation. If we have to get rid of some ditches up in that section, I think we can probably find places where mitigation could be installed to offset it, particularly in the 7-Eleven area, and also a little bit further north, once you get around the bend. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again, Kevin, for coming. Everybody has thanked you, and I'm sure the audience appreciates you being out here. In your presentation, you did talk about, and you showed an example in Issaquah, where you taper down to a narrower width for a bridge.
Correct.
And that's one of the issues is
Yes.
why the width can't be tapered in various places and perhaps more frequently. And there are in 2B more restrictions which will encourage us to think more flexible. And I think you might consider, I don't know the numbers, but intuitively, the trail isn't going to be used as heavily as, say, the Sammamish Trail or the Burke-Gilman Trail, so or Green Lake, for example. Sure. So it's not that we need a superhighway going through here, and so I think tapering, eliminating the soft shoulders in areas where it's critical for the environment too. I think if you can open up the flexibility and the mind thinking on these sections, it really would help. And everything else was covered by my compatriots here. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Whitten.
I understand our drainage requirements for the Lake Sammamish Basin are that we have 50% phosphorus removal. How is the county going to achieve that?
That's a more technical question than I have an answer for, but I can get a response to you.
Can you do that? I mean, because all of these environmental things impact that. The more trees you have, the less phosphorus you have, because the trees help absorb the runoff and recirculate it through the transevaporation process, et cetera. Are these vaults you're going to be installing going to have phosphorus removal in them?
Excuse me?
The vault you were mentioning at the north, was it the north end, which?
It's in the south segment, yes.
South segment. Is it going to have a filter in it to remove phosphorus?
My guess is it probably will have filters to retain and filter the water through. I'll ask our operating engineer.
Does maybe your staff currently, right now, present has an
Yes.
answer to that phosphorus question?
We don't have an answer to that specific question, but we will get one.
Thank you. Maybe that would be an opportunity to partner with the city also, because our runoff from the parkway isn't included with what you have to treat, and we don't have to treat it if it's existing, but it sure would be nice for the lake to get cleaned up a little bit with this opportunity. You mentioned that there were 4 areas for continued collaboration between the city and the county. Could you identify what those are for me, please?
Those 4 areas are the site distance triangles, where we had both identified separate standards that we're working towards a negotiated standard that we can propose. There is a stop sign at 206 that we're talking about, so the volume of use at that intersection and sort of the rights of way. There is, I'm going to have to actually jump back to the third one. One is a protocol for tree removal during construction. We want to make sure that if we do start construction and we're finding out that roots are compromised and the tree might not survive, or if we're finding that a tree that's currently there that's been identified to save because it's important but it has disease, having conversations with the city about that removal of those types of trees. And let me see what the last issue, oh, there we go, right there. It's the drainage. The drainage is the last issue.
And you mentioned there were 5 partial design challenges remaining. 5? What 5 are those?
I think that's in some areas where we have walls in place, and the request was to shift the trail to the east. And what we identified is that, actually, vegetation and shifting the trail to the east. And what we're doing is we're tightening up our lines. We're putting in a wall, 1 wall versus 2. We're adding additional parking for homeowners and access for emergency vehicles. So we can't quite accommodate what the city's request is, but there's some benefits to what we are doing in that particular section.
Thank you. Is there a speed limit on the trail?
We do have a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on our trail system.
Okay.
1.5, yes.
How do you enforce that? Do you put up signs?
We have trail rules. We have signs. We also have a contract with the sheriff's office who monitors our trails within King County. We don't need to use them that often, but on occasion when issues do pop up that are brought to our attention, we'll have the sheriff's office go out there and ticket or provide warnings to folks.
So now if the city were to impose a limit of 10 miles per hour, as I understand, another city has recently done on this trail extension, I think it was Lake Forest Park, I can't remember which one. Yeah. Would that be enforced by the county?
If there's a posted speed limit, we would enforce that speed limit, yes.
Okay, thank you. From a safety standpoint, the sight distance, I thought in general the county was processing the permit and applying city standards and city ordinances. Is that correct?
Well, for the sight distance, much of the trail has been designed based on federal standards. Most trails of this nature often receive federal funding. We follow federal guidelines. So we're following the design standards we base the trail on are federal standards. I'm not sure there's a dedicated sight distance triangle for regional trails that the city has. I don't believe they do. So it's a matter of using guidelines that are out there to identify what you're going to put on the ground.
Let me ask you this. Is the whole situation between the counties at the north end not being flexible in terms of trail alignment and trail width due to the fact that you want federal grant funding?
No.
And have to follow the federal standards?
No, that's a minor. I mean, following federal standards is important for our funding, but predominantly we are confined in many areas in terms of where we can put the trail. And so that drives its alignment within the corridor.
But isn't it also true that in other areas of this 44-mile trail that you actually have 10 feet width instead of 12?
Again, I think we looked at the bridge as it was an issue where...
No, I meant as a standard width for that segment of the trail.
No, I think it's 12 feet that's the identified standard. Okay.
The vast majority of it is 10 feet wide, 5, 6
Of the East Lake Sammamish Trail?
Sammamish Trail,
Oh.
Gilmer Trail, regional trails all over King County.
Okay.
So to respond to that, the Sammamish River Trail was, we've redeveloped 2 sections over the last 10 years, 2 existing standards of 12 feet. There is 1 section left from 124th down into the city of Sammamish that is 10 feet wide, you're correct. But it is proposed to be developed to the existing standard. The Burke-Gilman Trail that we manage between 145th City of Seattle up to Kenmore is a 12-foot wide trail that was just redeveloped. The university and the City of Seattle are planning to redevelop the remaining portions to that same standard.
So in other words, the existing trail is 10 feet wide.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah.
one more?
I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really appreciate the increased flexibility and accommodations you've made. I think that's wonderful. I think there may be more steps to go, but from what we were facing in the first north phase and what we were hearing about to what's happening now, I think it's wonderful. Thank you very much for being more flexible and for being more accommodating and considering both the city's concern and those of some of our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. And your staff.
Thank you. I just want to say also thank you, and I appreciate the county executive's office, the county executive, to responding to us, and we appreciate that very much. And I'm hopeful that that what happens on the 2A section will bode well for the future section. Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin, thank you. We will have worked with you on many projects in the city, whether it's the transfer of the Beaver Lake Park or whether it's the Evans Creek Preserve overlook. It's been a pleasure to work on overall, but this project we seem to be struggle a lot. And it's partly because that you see this crowd right here, these folks, their livelihoods, and they're extremely concerned about it. If you go back to that slide that we have a stick showing the width of the trail in relationship to what we're trying to build there. Yeah, here's the white section is 12 feet, and those blue sections or the orange sections are about 3 feet on each side, right? That's what we're trying to demonstrate there. And if we were to try to keep the 12-foot paved section with some reasonable shoulder, my golly, we probably address a lot of issues here. So I want to reemphasize some of my council members said, and you heard this from me before many times, probably more than you wanted to hear, but this is something that we really have to work through it. It just helps us not only minimizing the impact environment there, but also preserving lots of trees and minimizing impact on the private properties too. So I look forward to continuing to working with you. I sincerely want to thank you again. Since our meeting in December, has been a significant change on providing some responses, and look forward to seeing your 95% design and continue to collaborate on this project. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break, I guess, to fix the microphone. So
I apologize. I know some of the folks have been waiting some of you have been waiting for a long time, but we got to get that mic start working so we can record the comments if anybody wants to make some comments here. So we need a 5-minute break to have the IT people start working on that.
okay,
Thank you.
All right.
Need you back here.
okay, we're going to get started again. Next up, I'm going to say a couple things about public comment before we get started. But this is public comment. Oh, I see. I was wondering what the noise was. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council. 3 minutes limit per person, or 5 minutes if representing the official position of a recognized community organization. If you'd like to show a video or a PowerPoint, it must be submitted or emailed by 5 p.m. It's too late now, I guess, by the end of business day to the city clerk. So for next time, if you want to do that, please give your name and address. I'm going to suggest a couple things. One, I'm seeing that about 95% of the people here are here about the trail, and there are maybe 3 or 4 people who are here about another issue. You might want to consider our next meeting, or you can sit out there and wait. Either way, it's up to you. The other thing that I would say is I'm going to ask, yes?
What about putting that other group in front of the other 95%?
Let's have a vote. Okay, yeah, you want to get out of the room safely, right? The other thing that I would suggest, and this worked pretty well the last time when that other group was in the room, for the most part, a couple of weeks ago, Tom Odell likes to call it the ditto rule. If someone who has spoken before you has said something you agree with, and you don't feel like you need your whole 3 minutes, please feel free to say, I agree with that other person. So we can get your message. We understand you've made a comment, but perhaps we can get through all the comments a little earlier. I also am going to call out 4 or 5 names at a time, and we'll want you to, I guess we're still going over here to the platform, the podium. Thank you, Tom. It's a podium. So that way we can get through. So if we could leave some space there. I'm sorry, Scott. Leave some space there along the wall so people can kind of line up over there. I'm going to start with page 1, Don B. Larson.
That was page 1. I got here at 10 minutes to 6.
Well, it says page 1. Oh, there's 2 page 1s. Okay, here's what happened. Some people signed up on our public hearing, which is later tonight, and so I will. I'll go to the actual page 1, and it is Scott Hamilton first. So you're in the right position, and then following Scott is David Beatty, Arul Menzies, John Trimble, and Jan Bird. Those will be the first 5. So if you want to kind of light up over that, against that wall and get started, Scott, you can start.
Okay, does this actually work now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Scott Hamilton, 19727 Southeast 19th Street. At 4:30 this afternoon, I sent the council and staff some written comments. So I won't go over those except to highlight a couple of things and then react to some of the things that I heard tonight. The first thing that I'll talk about is that my principal concerns are about the environment, since I do not live along the trail and I don't have issues with all the things that are quite well known here. I'm not sure that I'm not convinced yet that the solutions that have been talked about today are go quite far enough. And I want to also say that last week I walked the trail with Kevin Brown and members Odell and Keller. And I also met last week with Laura Philpott, and I really found those meetings to be very helpful, and I really appreciated the courtesies that were provided for just me as a single person meeting with them. Where I don't think that this is really going far enough is I'm not really sure yet, Mr. City Manager, that not using pervious surfaces should be ruled out as an option. You're absolutely correct that compacted gravel becomes impervious surface, but if you do the proper preparation under the trail, then it can be conceivably a pervious surface. So it's a design issue. It's not necessarily an either-or type of thing, you know. I also think that one of the things when we talk about mitigation is that you can create wetlands that would serve the dual purpose of helping the parkway runoff as well as redirecting some of those ditches, those unnamed creeks, whatever you want to call them. And there, in Section 2A, there are a couple of very large areas where you can have some opportunity to create some wetlands that could help the stormwater runoff. And one is that huge grass area right down by 212th. Another is that area immediately across from the 7-Eleven, which right now is being used as their staging area for construction materials as well as surplus materials. And then right across the street on the same side of the parkway is another area that could conceivably be a wetland. So there are some areas where you could create some wetlands that would help drainage issues. The design standard, the width that the county continues to favor, I'll wrap up here, that favors the 18 feet. I don't believe that the county is being nearly as flexible as it could be on that. One of the things that you talked about with respect to the speed limit, and it was 15 miles an hour, not 50 miles an hour, is that if you narrow it, it becomes traffic calming in essence as well. But I just don't think quite yet things have gone quite far enough. And then the balance of my comments are in the email that I sent you at 4:30 today.
Okay.
And you'll have to hold that. They didn't quite take that.
Hi, my name is David Beatty. At 1793 28th Avenue Northeast in Issaquah. And thanks for hearing a neighbor. But my son and I used to come over here all the time, and he with his BMX bike and scooter, and really honed his skills here until we were getting our own skate park. But once he did, once he started to get a little too fast for the park, I was looking for another outlet for him, and I got him a 24-inch road bike. And then I realized there's really no place to ride it. You can't really zoom around the streets because it's dangerous, and I don't think kids should be on streets without a driver's license. It's hard enough as it is. So we used to go to Miramore to use the trail up there, but that's just too far. So my main thing that gets me out here is I want a trail. I want a trail close by. That he could use, that I could use. The road works okay for me. And the other thing that gets me out here a little bit is a while ago they put in the Issaquah Preston Trail kind of near me, which I thought I had hoped for that because it was on the other side of the hill for me. And they decided to make it a dirt trail. And I thought, well, dirt trail, who on average, goes, we have lots of hiking trails around there. Why is that dirt? It's not really useful for bikes. So I'm a little apprehensive about and the reason I understood it was because of wetlands. And it just gets me because here's this major freeway and then 10 feet away, you can't build a paved trail because of wetlands, which doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, I've ridden on trails a fair amount myself in the past. I've lived in different parts of the country. And, to me, the logic for trails is just like it is for freeways or road planning. Wider is better, controlled access is better, put lines on it's better, separate fast from slow it's better. I mean, all that science is the same for I think for any other, people on their own, where their bikes are walking. And in that sense, there's just not enough room to make a really safe trail. A successful trail is a busy trail. And to me, in my personal experience, that I've encountered problems I guess I'll call it crashed. It's from congestion. It's from when there's, when there's other people around and you touch or hit or whatever. I've touched handlebars a couple times, and I've gone off the trail, and it saved me going off to the shoulder. So, to me, width is potentially safety. And separation of users is also a good idea, whether there's room to do that. But I feel like the science is, just look at roads and that same stuff applies. And in that sense, it gets me that they don't even put lines in the middle of the trails now to it really does work in my experience to keep people on their side. So I guess in the end, you know, I can't tell you what trail design, I'm not into the weeds of it all, but what's going to be more hazardous or not. But I just feel like the trade-off should be for a very good reason if you're going to compromise on the trails.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Arul Menzies, is that it?
Hi, my name is Arul Menezes, 3145 East Lake Sammamish Lane, Southeast Sammamish. I've been a resident of the city for 20 years. I've enjoyed the trail for much of that time. I love the trees along the trail, and I'm here to speak for the trees. If you've visited the north segment of the trail as constructed currently, I think you've noticed that it is not the trail that you've known and loved, a natural path through our city. It's a freeway. It's completely out of character with the rest of the city, and it's had a major impact on our natural environment. I'm very happy to see that the city has gotten involved and working with the county to make sure that we don't have that level of destruction when in the remaining segments of the trail. And I'm hoping you will continue to work with them, especially with regards to the ditches that have been designated wetlands and the width of the trail, which are the two major things that are driving the destruction of the trees. I want to specifically talk about a section in section 2A. This is from station number 224 to 233 on the plans. To those of us not familiar, it is the section of the trail immediately south of the traffic light at East Lake Sammamish and 212th. And in that section, according to the trail plans, the trail has been shifted about 5 feet towards the lake. And as a result, all the trees on that side of the trail, which amount to about 30 significant trees, and many more smaller trees that aren't even marked on the plans as significant, are all slated for removal. And there is a 10 feet tall retaining wall, nearly 600 or 700 feet long, I haven't measured it exactly, that is planned in that area. So you can imagine that the destruction of those trees, that's a full 25% of the trail slated for removal in that section. And there's the ditch there is labeled wetland 13A. It is a ditch, it's a man-made construction. I would urge flexibility and in not treating it as a wetland or providing mitigation so that the trail can be moved to the east, away from the lake, and we can save those trees and avoid the need for building a giant retaining wall in that area. Once again, I want to thank the council for stepping up and working with the county and making sure that the trail is something that we can all be happy about and retain our natural environment in the way that we would enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's try to calm the, you know, we've got a lot of people in the room and want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak and not feel like they're being outnumbered, put it that way. Okay, John Trimble is next, then Jan Bird, and then after that I've got Dick Stevens, Reed Brockway, and Susan Brockway. So if you want to head over and get in the line, that would be great. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council, staff. It's a pleasure to be able to come in here and see the city at work. And I certainly want to extend appreciation to Mr. Brown and the work that he reported on. I'm very encouraged by that. I've lived in the Sammamish area for about, well, since 1991. I remarked to somebody that I think I saw one of the last trains that went on that roadbed about 1991 or two. I live just above where Southeast 24th Way comes.
Before you get going, could you give your address as well?
Oh, it's 2813 194th Place, Southeast.
Okay, thank you.
And at my age, they say you're supposed to keep active and exercise, so I try to get out for an extended walk, and yes, I'm a bicycler. I do quite a bit of that as well, and really enjoy it. And I can tell you that I can hardly wait to get on that new trail. I mean, we have got a tremendous asset just about ready to be here and available for us. And it's going to be wonderful for everybody, young and old, mothers walking their kids, their dogs, whoever else. And to be able to ride all the way from here, from Issaquah, all the way around the lake and out to past the Ballard Locks is going to be incredible. I've done it. It's from Marymore Park It's a good long ride, and it's a great time to do it. I encourage you all to try it. I'm also saddened to learn that some of the homeowners have felt that their concerns have not been listened to and have been ignored. And in some cases, they're really upset about it. And unfortunately, that's something that has to be, it's flavoring the discussions right now. I hope we can get past that. I think we all need to work towards that. There's even been talk of legal action that would delay the whole process and make it cost more. And we all know who benefits when the lawyers get involved. It's certainly not going to be the city and the citizens of Sammamish.
I just want to thank you all.
He's the city attorney, right? Sorry about that. My son's in law school right now. He's just about ready to graduate, and I have a daughter-in-law who's a lawyer as well. We just can't let that happen. We need to work together to put aside our differences and work toward solutions for these concerns. We can accommodate as many of their concerns. I think we should try as reasonably possible. We all like trees, otherwise we wouldn't live in the state of Washington, right? Altering the trail to save a few of the significant trees along the trail should be encouraged. We should even be able to save some of the fences and privacy hedges along the trail and maintain some privacy for the residents. That can't be too difficult to work out. The alleged wetland boundaries along most of the trail are just really unkempt ditches. Those wetlands could be reduced or filled in or, what's the word, mitigated to solve the trail width issue. But you need to remember that this trail is going to be pretty popular. It's going to be here for a long time. I don't know if you've ridden bikes lately. Many of you, maybe you ought to try it sometime. But when you ride up behind a couple or a mother and daughter with their stroller and you're on your bike, you're going to need the 12 feet to be able to give them an adequate passage area to be safe. 12 feet sounds like a lot, but not when you're riding along on a bicycle. And you've got concerns with kids and dogs and everybody else. They all need to use the trail. They want to use the trail. It's going to be here for a long time. So that means maintaining the adequate width for all the walkers and families.
Can we have some, let's...
The 12-foot width will ensure that. The additional gravel apron on either side, I think we can be flexible there. It'd be nice if there's some apron.
Could you go ahead and sum up?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm over my time. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really am encouraged by what the county has offered, and we're looking forward to using the trail.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Jan Bird. My address is 3310 221st Avenue Southeast. And I'm also happy to hear that there's more back and forth conversation between both the city and the county about finishing the trail. One of my concerns, is like some other folks, is about the width of the trail. And I know there's some sections, especially South B, where it's going to be impossible to do an 18-foot width. But I'm hoping city and the county can work together with the lakeside property owners as well as trail users, come to a reasonable design that's going to be safe for everybody involved. And I urge that King County make reasonable accommodation, and it sounds like they're trying to start doing that, so we don't jeopardize safety. But if we can do something where there's no other alternative, then we're going to have to make it a little bit more narrow there. But I've been a biker on the Sammamish River and the Burke-Gilman trails, and now I'm a walker on the East Lake Sammamish Trail. The 3 foot of shoulder and clear area on each side is needed, and it's not overbuilt. And I can't tell you how many times that I've had, on a busy weekend, when I've been on a bike, I've had to bail out because maybe a kid's run across in front of me. You really do need it for safety. And as a walker, gives me a little more room to be out of the way of people on bikes. I also, and by the way, if none of you have ever been on the Burke-Gilman Trail on a sunny weekend, you ought to do that so you kind of have a feel for why the need for the extra space. I did attend a trailside meeting that King County had earlier last year. And there was a family that was concerned who lives on the trail because their elderly parents walk the trail, and they're concerned that they might get run over if the trail was paved. And if the trail was sufficiently wide, this shouldn't be a problem, can accommodate everybody. So, although some view the narrow sections of the Burke-Gilman, they say it works, they should also know, as Mr. Brown already pointed out, these are narrow sections for more well, these are areas that are being widened, and these are also areas that have had more accidents. And so they're trying to bring them up to the newer standards. But it's also my hope that the county will do their part to minimize the number of trees that are removed. I think that's a good start, limiting them up. I know it's a balancing act because you have sight distances and you also have tree roots that push up the trail. If you've ever been on the Burke-Gilman around Log Boom Park, that, at least years ago, was a big issue. So it's definitely a balancing act. But I know that King County is committed to replanting with native plants. They've done that on the finished parts already. And that and the fish culverts certainly are going to improve the environment. So anyway, basically, you know, this is an improvement over most of our developers. When's the last time you saw a developer do anything with native vegetation or doing anything for fish? So I think that we'll, as a city, will benefit from a trail being finished to these kinds of standards. So I ask that the city expedite issuance of the permits for the permanent trail so all Sammamish residents can enjoy a safe and beautiful trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Dick Stevens?
Hello, my name is Dick Stevens, and I'm an attorney, one of the members of the bar as Mike Kenyon, and I represent over 50 property owners along the East Lake Sammamish Trail, and we are in litigation not to stop the trail at all, but is in a dispute with the federal government over the nature of the rights that they had and that were taken when the county acquired the rights to operate a trail. I think it's important, and my clients are glad to see that the city is taking an active role as the permitting authority on this project. But I think I just want to add something which I think is important for the city to really recognize, and that is that the county's rights in this trail corridor are limited. There are areas where all that the county has acquired are prescriptive easements. They do not own it in fee. And in our litigation, the federal court has indicated that what the railroad had was an easement and did not own the property in fee. But I think maybe even more important than those ways in which the rights are limited is that the basis for the county to operate the trail is under what's called a notice of interim trail use, which is filed with the Surface Transportation Board, a federal agency that regulates railroads. And the federal government has said, yes, King County, in the interim, you can operate this trail. That is until there's a need for a railroad here again. And I assume that the county, because they're spending a lot of money, they're not thinking that this is going to be ever used for a railroad, at least not for a long time. I would just say to the city that since this is a limited right of the county, to be very careful about permanent changes that affect the county's rights and the neighbors' rights. When you start taking out significant trees, it's practically impossible to get those back in any sort of reasonable amount of time. And so the city's role as regulating this, I think, needs to be very careful that the rights of the county are limited. They're limited to operating a trail. It's not to operate a park. It's not to do with whatever they want. It is to operate a trail. And that is limited, and the decisions that are made that have a permanent, long-lasting impact need to be looked at very, very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Reed Brockway and Susan Brockway, and then I want to give three more people a chance to get up in line. I've got Richard Pierce, Pete Hartmeyer, I believe, Reed Brown will be the next three after that. Okay.
Reed Brockway, 167 East Lake, Sammamish Shore Lane, Northeast. My testimony concerns the legality of the county's trail design, but first let me say I was not present at the last city council meeting, but I watched the video. Riveting, the word comes to mind. The city was right to be incensed at the county's lack of responsiveness to the city's comments and those of its citizens. I've been involved with trail issues more or less continuously since the late 90s, and the county's approach has always been to resist to the maximum extent it can any segment of the public that opposes its tactics. Legal action seems to be the only thing the county respects. It appears the county's lack of respect is even for other jurisdictions like our city. But hopefully, in the end, you will, by your actions, command the county's respect. Now, as for the legal matters, in October, Show's attorney submitted comments to the city and county on several key issues concerning the trail design and the associated process. The county eventually responded to those comments, rebutting all of them, of course. But the county's arguments should not be tacitly accepted as valid. The city has a responsibility to critically assess those responses, reject those that are invalid, and heed Show's comments that survive that scrutiny, which should be all of them, I believe. Let me give you just one example. In its application for a shoreline substantial development permit, the county has identified numerous wetlands adjacent to the existing trail. It is claiming exemption from the city's wetland buffer regulations, thus avoiding a great deal of mitigation. But as our attorney shows, based on the applicable versions of the city's shoreline management program, the county is not exempt from those requirements. However, the county is claiming that ditches on the east side of the trail are wetlands and using that as justification for shifting the trail towards the lake. We've been hearing a lot about that. That results, among other things, in removing a lot of trees. But both city and state codes say that man-made ditches are not wetlands. So the county could avoid having to move the trail and the wetland buffer issue by simply going along with the legal definition of wetlands. The county can't have it both ways. Either those ditches are wetlands, in which case much more mitigation is required, or they aren't wetlands, in which case the trail does not need to be moved west. That's just one example of the inconsistencies and non-compliance with city code present in the county's plans. Show's attorney has identified a couple others, and there are more besides. Our city needs to independently and thoroughly scrutinize the county's design from a legal code compliance standpoint before approving any permits. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on. Okay.
Susan Brockway, 167 East Lake Sammamish Shoreline Northeast. And I have one further point to make concerning the city's role in reviewing trail design. In the last city council meeting, the Public Works Director stated that she had not reviewed the 90% plans for the next segment to be constructed. And I understand the city has had those plans since sometime late last year. To not have reviewed them by now seems quite unreasonable. Perhaps her staff has reviewed those plans on her behalf, and now I hear that they've walked it, which is very, very good to hear. I just hope they're really scrutinizing those plans. In any case, we do hope that they are doing that. They're in the process of doing so. There are issues of compliance with city code, as we have pointed out in prior testimony. It is irresponsible of the city not to review the county's design in detail. That's where the devil is, as they say. The plans should be thoroughly scrutinized against city code and required to be amended where necessary before any permits are issued. It is our opinion that the county is not to be trusted. They're nice people, but some of the actions, they're not to be trusted. And our city should not rely on the County Department of Permitting and Environmental Review for this critical task. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard Pierce.
I'm Richard Pierce, address 383 12th Avenue Northwest, Issaquah. I'm here just to say I'd love you to stay the course. This is a tough public works project, but you guys up there are paid to get through these things, and it's one of those things that I know would be a struggle. This project is simply an enhancement of a trail that's been there for years, and of course has property issues like all older easements and property rights. So I just hope that you stay along with that and watch what's happening, but make equitable decisions that both look at the rights of the property owners along East Lake Sammamish and those that are upland in your city. There's a lot of bikers up in the rest of your city, hundreds of bikers that are looking for a good place to ride. You've got a very hilly site in most of your city, and the flat land trail is excellent for those who'd like to bike. There's a lot of, and this is just my observation, but there's a lot of commuters that go to both Microsoft and Costco and other large employers in this area. And right now they're up on the Parkway most of the time. But most of them, especially those who bike in the evening and after dark, would love to get off that busy street, even if you had tons of lights on you. And this would be a good route for them to go. I'm also like to be able to say that there are 2 other sections on either side of your city that have been completed. The one in Issaquah right now has many more users than have ever been there before. So the paved surface, the 12-foot paved surface is an enhancement to that. Finally, as a past veteran, I'll say that I've got other folks that I know that are wheelchair and limited use people that I don't want you to forget. They're part of the population, and they're here in this city as well as all the other cities in the United States, mostly because of the continuous wars we've been in the last few years. Don't forget them. They need a wide avenue, and that 12 feet is for them as well as for the rest of the users. Small kids are the other issue, and they've been mentioned tonight already, so I won't repeat that. But please look at the rest of your jurisdiction and understand that there are lots of users out there, and this is what I consider a seminal public works project for your city. Please help it along. Finally, I'd like to just say that there'll be, with all public works projects, there are issues like easements, trees, wetlands, driveways, widths, center lines, and other sticky issues. They go with the territory, and there'll always be people that aren't exactly happy, and there'll always be people that are thrilled to death. You have to find the middle line that's equitable to all those citizens of your city. I hope you find that line and stick with it. Thank you.
Okay, Pete Hartmeyer.
Hi, I'm Pete Hartmeyer, 12501 197th Court, Northeast, Woodinville. I support the completion of the trail without delay. I encourage all parties to expeditiously resolve any issues around this incredible addition to the east side, and it sounds like that's moving in that direction. The completion of the trail will see a link from the sound to the mountains, will be a jewel for the area. I support King County and its stance to build the trail to the standard that will ensure that the trail will meet the needs in a safe and manner and is easily maintained. The Burke-Gilman Trail has older sections that are narrow and broken up by routes. With the growing traffic on the trail, you can really see that the benefits of the wider, newer sections built to the newer codes over the older sections. With bikes and pedestrians in large numbers, the 12-foot paved with 3-foot shoulders is not overbuilding and is totally needed. These same standards should be applied and implemented on the East Lake Trail. The standards are designed to make the trail as safe as possible, and I applaud King County for their work in this area. I understand that some of the areas may not be easily conform to these standards, and some homeowners are objecting to the impact. I urge King County to make reasonable accommodations, if possible, without jeopardizing safety in rare instances where no other alternative exists. The trail will be around for a long time, and it is important that construction be done correctly. The sections that are complete are excellent and convey the values that the city wants to be associated with. The completed trail sections are certainly an improvement over what was there and can only add to the enjoyment in the area. Young couples are making the decision where to live based in part on the availability of these facilities. My own adult children factor this in heavily. The millennium generation does not value the car in the same way as we did, valuing active recreation much higher. With the high tech in the area, the trail is just what these families are looking for. Completion of the trail will signal that Sammamish is building a city in tune with the needs of the residents and the region as a whole. You will be proud of the trail. And I just want to add one last thing about the comment about the 10 miles per hour. You'll be given tickets to a lot of joggers at 6-minute miles. Right, thank you.
We'll be careful. Yeah. Reed Brown is next, but after him, so you can get lined up, Rick Cooperwicks, Mark Cross. I'm going to have trouble reading this first name. I think it's Hedberg, perhaps. What is the first name? Anybody know who that is? Okay, that's you. Okay. Yeah, when you get a chance, tell us what your name is. Shelley Bowman, and then Mike Heddick, or Heddich. Okay.
Okay, my name is Reed Brown. I live at 3139 East Lake Sammamish Shore Lane Southeast, which is one of the properties in 2B. And I'd like to start out, well, I have 3 points, and they're really pretty succinct. Obviously, the trail appeals to people all over the county, but you also are my council, and so I'm here to ask you directly to work with us, the homeowners impacted on the trail, as we head into this next planning section. We had a north section where they pretty much did what they wanted. We had a south section, a 2A section, where thank God you stepped in at the last minute and seemed to have gotten some accommodation. And I would rather see things happen in advance on the third section, the final section, rather than get to the 95% plan and have to come back and have a meeting like this. So that's point one. Point two, I also represent an even smaller group of people who are a very small group of property owners who are right now in legal limbo, and I ask that the council and the city attorney help us going forward. King County claims they own several parcels of land via adverse possession, but the federal courts have held that this is at best an adverse easement, as Mr. Stevens said earlier, based on the corridor, an adverse easement based on the corridor the railroad actually used. Without agreements between the homeowners and King County on subsurface rights, width of easement, and center line of easement, I think we have a problem going forward. And I think that we need a mediator, and I think that the council could be that mediator, rather than turn this thing into a 95% plan with litigation and everything else. So I just put that out as a way to move forward, get the trail done, and I will add as a footnote to this point that I am more than happy to have a full-width trail as long as the county takes it out of the hillside that's to the east of me, as opposed to removing my parking area. Okay, final point. I think all of you have driven down Rainier Boulevard in Issaquah. I don't know whether you've noticed it, but this was the newly paved piece from this last year. That is all permeable asphalt that they put in. If Issaquah can use permeable asphalt, why can't the county? When I asked the county a year ago at one of the meetings, they said they couldn't do it, the stuff doesn't hold up. Well, if it doesn't hold up, somebody tell Issaquah that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rick? Rick Cooperwicks, you're next.
I have a slide presentation. Can someone pull that up for me, please? My name is Richard B. Cooperwitz. I live at 4643 192nd Drive Northeast, Sammamish, Washington. I'm here tonight as a director of Hidden Ridge Homeowner Association. We had a few more of our homeowner directors here tonight, but they have to do some work. And so they had to leave after the long engagement here, so I appreciate this. The information I'm going to discuss today in the presentation is from information and public records requests from the city over many years. See, how do you do the next slide, please? And I'm here to talk about the Northeast 42nd Street Opticom barricade. I appreciate everybody's patience. I understand why you're all here. You're going to hear something towards the end that'll probably fit right in with your needs. The city of Sammamish needed to create a roadway infrastructure not created by King County. Let's call it for what it is, all right? The city inherited a real road mess. We understand the challenges. There were over 20 plus at the time of incorporation barricades, something like 22, 23, if I can't remember the exact number, when the city was formed. Many were removed over the years because they were obviously related to development. There were trees that were areas, and those were going to be taken out. So there's been quite a few removed. I'd say probably less than 10 remain in the city. I could be wrong about the exact number. There are 4 or 5 that are extremely challenging. They're not necessarily just an issue of removing a barricade. There are more complex issues related to the interconnections of the roadways. The key point on those 4 or 5 is they're not free to mitigate. It's going to be real money. You might as well call it like it is, unless you want to act like unincorporated King County and just ignore all these issues. There's no barricade in the city like the 42nd Street Opticom and the roadways connected to it. I've been to every roadway barricade in this city, taken pictures, studied it with other people, and handed those to the city years ago. There's several cities that have, or several barricades that have similar issues, but none as a total system where the roadways are connected. There's, in the case of 42nd Street, some of the streets, there's between 20 to 27 variances that were granted by unincorporated King County. Now, look, developers get variances on their plats. 20 to 27's getting up there, folks. All right, there's something wrong here. So the real issue the city's facing on these barricade issues, especially the Opticom, does open road connections supersede the need for safe communities? It's as simple as that. You can be on one side or the other. Some want all barricades open, some want safe roads. Sammamish has a main arterial road plan. Use it. There is a master plan. You're not to use your residential roads as arterials. They're not designed for that. Next slide, please. On the issue of the Opticom, any individual, from my perspective, has a right to have their own opinion. They don't have to agree with me, they don't have to agree with our side, but they do not have the right to misrepresent who they represent. They do not have the right to spin. You can go ahead and do it, but if you get caught at it, you're going to lose credibility. You don't have the right to distort the facts, and you don't do in my business what we call, and I get in front of a lot of lawyers, you don't get to junk the science. If you're going to repeal the law of gravity, the burden's on you to show how you repealed it. The public records show an attempt to remove the Opticom barricade at 42nd is largely driven by one individual, a Mr. Greg Reynolds, and he has very limited support here. We might as well call it like it is. The public records show it for what it is. I'm not saying that they don't have a right to have their opinion, but if you're acting like you represent the neighborhood, you better bring the neighborhood. Next slide, please. I need to state categorically, as a member and a director of Hidden Ridge, Reynolds' claim that the barricade is forcing all the traffic onto his street appears to be false, and I'll show that in a reason in a second here. Reynolds, in the same meeting, not in front of the full council, but in conversations I was having with a couple council members, accused Hidden Ridge Homeowner Association of dumbing up vehicle accidents in our neighborhood. I'm sorry, sir, that's inconsistent with the evidence. Next slide, please. This is a quick shot of the Northeast Opticom position, and it's hard to see from the audience here, but that's Mr. Reynolds' house. He lives on a street that's over a mile away from the barricade. He's actually on a street that's closer to Sahali Way. So I'm sorry, folks. He doesn't represent his neighborhood, and telling me and trying to convince people that that barricade's causing all the traffic to go on your street doesn't pass the truth test. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a Hidden Ridge, 192nd Street, 192nd Drive Northeast, which is the way we leave Hidden Ridge. It's a 50% grade. Those pictures are in February 9th of last year. 25 to 30 cars were piled up at the bottom of the hill. These are people who know how to drive this street. They're familiar with it. You open up that barricade and put people on that road, rack up the accidents, folks. That is not a dummy test. That's a real picture. And there's a close-up of some of those pictures. Next slide, please. Now, if you think this is only a winter freezing condition, by the way, 192nd, they designed the road. There's an arterial spring coming out of the middle of the roadway. So when it freezes, it ices up on a 15% grade hill. You better know where you're going. In the summertime, let me go back to the summer picture, please. That's the summer of 2001. Somebody lost control and hit the curb and flipped over. It's a 15% grade. Pictures speak louder than words. Another shot on Waterbrook real quick, and I'll be done here in a second. That's a great design incorporated that I think the King County hearing examiner missed. Somehow they installed a negative camber turn on a curve. In other words, you got to make that turn, and gravity's working to flip you over rather than keep you on the road. Next one. That's a 20% grade. Sammamish would not design this. The city of Sammamish, to their credit, would not design this roadway network. Next slide, and I'm almost done here. Last city council session, you decided to leave. You voted in a resolution. There's some confusion on how many resolutions were passed, but I got the reading that there was a resolution that the council said, leave the Opticom as it is. City manager, leave this alone. Okay? We're a little frustrated because there wasn't a long-term commitment here, but look, we understand. You're trying to run a city. We're trying to work with you guys, all right? So we're trying to keep our people settled down. There may be a way where you might be able to mitigate these road connections, but I'm going to warn you, it's not going to be cheap. I can't figure a mitigation issue. If you're thinking it's only going to mitigate one part of the road, you probably have done an incomplete task here, and you're just fooling yourself. There is no easy, cheap fixes here. We're open up for discussion, but let me warn you. In my business, and I'm an investigator for criminal actions that corporations will do, all right? I don't need the business. I don't advertise. Rushing too quick a fix can be very reckless. That's time and time again. I'm not too impressed by suggestions I've heard from other players, not the city, about possible ways to mitigate. And lastly, we're seeing attempts again after the resolution vote to try to pit one neighborhood against another. The arguments aren't going to fly because there's differences in residential streets, folks. Not all streets are alike. And again, our problem is, how do you repeal the law of gravity? The neighborhoods that are really affected are Timberline Park, Waterbrook, Hidden Ridge, and some segments of Timberline. And we're open to having discussions with people trying to figure out what's going on. We think, by the number of people who are here tonight, and I was here last week, and it was not as many, but it was full, the city has more important matters on its plate than the attempt to remove the barricade. This is an important issue tonight. Thank you for your time and patience with me.
Okay, Mark Cross.
Hi, I'm Mark Cross. I live at 247 208th Avenue Northeast. And my bicycle riding days are probably behind me, but I am a walker of the trail. And as we switch from gravel to pavement, I do feel that the gravel shoulders are where I'm going to step out of the way of situations that I see where there's bikes, dogs, people, carts in the same place. And I do think in the summertime, particularly, we're going to have a lot of bikers. A lot of the organized rides happen around the lake, the triathlons, all of that. We're going to have some high volumes, and we do need the width. In the section that we talked about tonight, I appreciate the county coming in and giving this project in our city the attention to detail that it needs. I also appreciate their use of native plantings. I think this is something that the city, as well as the residents, could look to along the trail to preserve some of the natural look to it, and also the benefits to the environment. I also appreciate that they're getting rid of the knotweed that I've seen in patches along the trail, and there's private residents that could get help from King Conservation District on that. Finally, I want to say that the city continues to have drainage problems where private properties, as people attempt to develop the steep slopes above the parkway, you have water running across the entire parkway, primarily to the north end. And again, in the icy conditions, you don't have to have a steep slope for that to be a problem. And I do think that as people pave driveways, as they develop those new houses, the city really does need to focus on the drainage and getting it into the drainage system. And I think that the city has a lot of the water that people are talking about and responsibility for it. But I will tell people that in many cases, if you look above the parkway, you can see which ones of these ditches are actually carrying a stream. And at some time in the distant past, people felt it was more convenient to run that stream maybe down along the rail line a little bit farther and then have it drop down into the lake. So some of these actually are streams that have been diverted. They're not just a ditch that's carrying a runoff from the adjacent trail. So we do have a problem, but they should watch out what you ask for because, Mr. Brockway, because we could end up having to acquire additional land along the trail for mitigation if you push the point that these are all wetlands. I think that they've been categorized correctly and they need to be handled correctly, and that we do need to do the mitigation for water quality purposes. Finally, I'll say that if you look at the 30 or 40% plans that were out earlier for that a lower section, there was a list of trees to be taken down, and they had been looked at by a botanist, and they had several of them were just old or had split trunks and needed to come out anyway. I do appreciate that the county's now looking at the ones close to the trail and finding ways to preserve them. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lizette Hedberg. I'm 2440 140th Avenue Northeast in Bellevue. I'm a concerned citizen who's enthusiastic about the trail. I've never come over to the Sammamish side very much because I didn't really knew it existed. And then when Issaquah started the trail, I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And then it got me over more to your side, to your community, to see the growth that you have up here. It was exciting. What I'd like to have the council take a look at is you've got a marvelous opportunity here. You really do. And I commend you to how you can collaborate, partner, see the vision of your community and your people that live in Sammamish that are having issues and concerns. But you've got a great opportunity here to partner with King County Parks that owns the property. Now, that might be contentious, but things change. The landscape changes. It once was a railroad. Now that has changed. It's going to be repurposed for the whole overall community. And that states a lot what Sammamish can come to the table, permit the areas, work together with the King County, and hear your citizens here. And I'd like to just suggest that you align with the federal guidelines, make it the 12 feet where it can be. Might be some areas that you have to trim a little bit, but as other people have mentioned here, safety. Everybody uses the trail, multi-purposes. So I commend you to work together with your citizens, collaborate. You have an awesome opportunity here to keep this trail moving forward. As they stated, King County stated today, it started in 1971. Well, you know what? You've got the opportunity to close the gap and make the trail a vision of the future. You could put signage there, state some things about your community. So it's also a learning tool for young people to learn about the shrubs and the flowers and the trees. That's awesome. It's a great opportunity. So thank you very much for this platform to speak and to give our input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Shelley Bowman. I'm from 2440 140th Avenue Northeast in Bellevue. Thanks for this opportunity to meet tonight. It's so great to have a collaborative effort on a trail in an epic region that we live in versus a permanent train track where we might be coming together in a different form, fighting pollution of noise and coal and oil and who knows what else. So this is really an exciting time to take and grab this trail. I want to be a proponent in favor of the maximum width. Why? Why does that matter to me? because if you've ever walked or ridden all the beautiful trails that we have in our region that create the quality of life here, the reason that people move here, the reason that I stay here is because we love nature and we want to be out in it. You need that space. Just go now. It's so funny to be early in February and have the Burke-Gilman Trail overrun with people. How great is that, that we're all outside in community having a wonderful experience together. But safety is a primary issue. I've been on the trail on days when families are there and there are 3 or 4 abreast and they've got their stroller and their dog on a zip line. It gets a little squirrely when you're on a bike. If you're going that lovely 10 or 15 miles an hour and respecting traffic, you still have this uneasy moment where you have to try and get around somebody. I also, on my bike, whether I'm biking or walking, jogging, being with little kids, I want to respect elderly or people that are new to the trail and aren't respecting the rights of the trail. And I need those little side barriers so that I can step and go around. And so we can all partner on that trail collaboratively and really enjoy it. I definitely question the fact that that trail won't be heavily utilized like the Burke-Gilman. If you build it, they will come, whether that's frightening or not. It's a wonderful experience. We all love the lake. It is our public lake. We all want to see the mountain ranges. We want to be out there. And after work, let's face it, it's ridiculous to try to get anywhere. I want to go to Poo-Poo Point and hike. Well, that can take me an hour and a half to get from Microsoft down there, and by that time I'm so stressed and road rage, I need a whole decompression. But the glory of just getting on your bike or going out to walk right out in your backyard, that's fabulous. And we can all enjoy that together, including the fact that I want to get that trail now. Let's not keep thinking about it. It's now. You've got a golden opportunity. Why don't we want to, with our bikes, ride on East Lake Sammamish? It's very scary. I'm older now, over 50, and I get frightened of all those cars. Oh, why don't I ride my big mountain bike? No, I'm out there for exercise and enjoyment of feeling the wind in my ear. I want my skinnier tires, and I don't, right now I have to use my different bikes. Okay, I'm going to go over there, and I want it to be paved because I'm over in Kirkland Corridor where we just got as far as getting it to that compact gravel stuff, and that's really nice if I take my touring bike, but I don't want to take my road bike. If I were commuting or trying to get anywhere or do some distance on speed, I'm really not going to be able to do it on that bike. I do enjoy my road bike. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mike is next. After Mike Hedich is Sean Joy Chatteroy, I guess. Hope I got that right. Bill Grieve, Michaela Dunphy, and Jim Greenfield. Okay.
Okay, Mike Hedich, 1419 East Lake Sammamish. First of all, I'm actually in favor of the trail, even though I live right there in one of the very critical areas where it's going to be very, very tight. But I'm also in favor of due process. And I'm actually, the rights of ownership and all that, that's already been covered. Safety's been covered, so I won't rehash that. But I feel, nobody's talked about how they feel. So I want to talk about how I feel for a minute as a homeowner. I feel very unheard. I feel that nobody's been responsive. I feel the county has been guilted into coming here tonight. And I feel that the county didn't actually answer any of the questions you all asked. And they were all very good questions. And there were actually no dates that answers would be provided to you. And I don't think that's due process. Okay? I think we all have an obligation to try our best to work together. And I also feel like there was a lot of patting ourselves on the back for just doing what we're supposed to do, and we're being too nice. Right? Let's get down and figure it out and quit being so nice and actually get the right people in the room and get some answers to real questions and not just perfunctory answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Grieve? No, I'm sorry. You're next. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shanjay Chatterjee, 4215 206th Avenue Southeast in Sammamish. We have lived next to the trail, used to be a rail line before, for 20 years. And I just want to go on record and say that we love the trail. We use it every single day and have been for ever since it was built. And even when it was a rail line, we used to walk it, walk our dogs, take my kids out there when the train wasn't there. We were safety conscious. So unlike people who are today thinking about an discovering Sammamish or discovering this beautiful area, this is a place I've lived and called my home for 20 years. I want to talk about three things today: safety, the environment, and something that nobody has talked about is frugal use of taxpayer money. Nobody here, for whatever reason, has talked about what are we spending this money for, and how are we spending it, and are we spending it efficiently? So let me start by looking at a couple of definitions, because I'm also confused about what we are trying to build. A trail, the definition of a trail, according to the Merriam-Webster, is a path through a forest or a field, etc. A pretty pastoral concept. The definition of a bicycle superhighway, on the other hand, and this is by the Danish government, Copenhagen, they have bicycle superhighways. They're very good bike people there. Their definition is it's a specifically targeted road or track targeted at commuters' needs, where one can expect the same high standard speed all the way from point A to point B without impediments. And the average speeds are expected there to be about 20 kilometers per hour, which, by the way, works out to about 12.5 miles per hour, which, incidentally, is less than the 15 miles that we are talking about for a multi-use facility or track. King County's promotional pictures talk about park in your backyard, a multi-use trail for pedestrians, bicyclists, and joggers. They show seniors with walkers, children on tricycles, moms with baby carriages, people walking dogs, etc. Just keep all those beautiful images in mind and then think about the bikes zipping by at 15 or even 10 miles an hour on a paved surface. So I think from the perspective where I stand and where I think a lot of people here stand, safety can be, the best way to mitigate safety is to keep the trail on the current footprint, wherever it is right now. Keep it there, pave it because it may be easier to maintain, but don't widen it for no good reason, because the speed needs to be mitigated on that. The second thing is, if you keep the trail on, keep the trail on the current footprint, you will also be able to reduce costs. You don't have to do all this mitigation of wetlands. You don't have to upfill, where things have to be, on a slide. And your costs are going to be significantly lower than whatever it is that.
Can you go ahead and sum up, if you could?
Okay. So I would also like to understand from King County, what are the costs? What is the budget for this project? Nobody has ever talked about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bill Grieve. Bill Grieve is next. You're on the list. Not here? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Vance and council members. My name is Michaela Dunphy, and I am here on behalf of Cascade Bicycle Club and our nearly 16,000 members to express support for the East Lake Sammamish Trail and its timely completion. Thank you for all your efforts in working with King County toward building out a safe trail that accommodates everyone's needs. As you may know, 60% of people in our region want to ride bicycles more, but don't because they're concerned about safety when riding on streets. Thriving regional trails, however, like the Burke-Gilman Trail and the future East Lake Sammamish Trail, can accommodate many of these people who might not otherwise choose to ride a bike. Trails fuel healthy, vibrant, active communities, and they connect people to key destinations and recreational opportunities. Once complete, the East Lake Sammamish Trail will be one of these world-class trails that connects to other fantastic regional trails like the Burke-Gilman, Sammamish River Trail, Marymoor Connector Trail, and the Issaquah-Preston Trail. Our enthusiasm for this project cannot be understated. We highly encourage the City of Sammamish and King County to expedite the permitting and trail building process and build out a trail that's safe for everyone, meets national trail width standards where possible, and maintains a shoulder where possible to reduce the risks of collision and injuries. We support a trail that's wide enough for bicyclists and pedestrians to safely travel in both directions, and a trail that's wide enough for everyone to safely cross the trail. We look forward to the day parents will be able to safely ride or walk along the trail with their children, the day new bike commuters will have the option of choosing a comfortable, safe off-street route as they learn the joys of bike commuting and the benefits of riding their bike to work in, say, Issaquah or Redmond or elsewhere. And the day bicyclists will be able to travel all the way from the start of the Burke-Gilman in Seattle to the foothills of the Cascades on a fully paved network of connected, convenient, safe regional trails. The East Lake Sammamish Trail is the 11-mile missing link that in this 44-mile network that can become an incredible asset to our region, and we look forward to its completion. We urge King County and the City of Sammamish to continue working together to make this trail a reality. Thank you very much for your time and all of your continued efforts around the East Lake Sammamish Trail.
Thank you. Okay, Jim Greenfield is next. After him is Tom Hornish, Fred Hammerquist, I believe it is. Ann and John Rohrbach, I believe. It's hard to read. And Melissa Grimaldi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Jim Greenfield, 1111 20th Avenue East, Seattle. I'm a longtime board member of Forterra, an organization that used to be known as the Cascade Land Conservancy, and I'm going to exercise my right to ditto a lot of what Michaela just said, because I thought she said it very well on behalf of the Cascade Bicycle Club. Forterra has as its mission to create great communities and conserve great lands, and the East Lake Sammamish Trail does both. That was a very quick 3 minutes.
That was a fast 3 minutes, but yeah.
I can talk faster, but I don't. The East Lake Sammamish Trail does both conserves great lands and creates a great community, both here in the city of Sammamish and in our region. That's why we worked so hard at Forterra 15 or so years ago to work with King County and the railroad to help acquire this trail in the first place. This part of the original trail system is the jewel in the crown. It really is. It's a gorgeous opportunity for the whole region and for the citizens of Sammamish to enjoy nature, to get some recreation, and to have some opportunity to commute off the automobile and off the roads. We think you really need to work hard to make this happen. We really appreciate how difficult it is these 15 years later to actually implement this trail, make it something that's viable, make it something that is loved by the property owners who are adjacent to it and by the community as a whole. We applaud your efforts to do so, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom Hornish.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tom Hornish. I'm here representing Sammamish homeowners. My address is 1237 East Lake Sammamish Shore Lane Southeast. I find it interesting. Well, first of all, I love how the process works. I mean, this is how the public process should work, hear from both sides and everything. I'm a little perplexed, however, to hear from many of the bike riders saying that we have to have a 12-feet trail, and I'm not sure they understand what that means if it's just a carte blanche 12-foot trail. I hope people can understand that if the 12-foot trail means 30% of the trees need to be removed, maybe it doesn't have to be a 12-foot trail. Maybe there is some mitigation or some happy medium there for everybody to come to, and we're open to have those discussions as well. We also, I went ahead and looked before the meeting at Cascade's website. They have 8 categories of riders. Only 3 of them say they average on their rides less than 15 miles an hour. 3 of the 8 categories. I looked at the rides that they have coming up in the next 4 months. Approximately 40% of those rides are expected to average less than 15 miles an hour. So the number of bikers that we're thinking would be on East Lake Sammamish Trail is probably not that big a number, because that big organization is not going to make those 40% rides on East Lake Sammamish Trail. They're going to go to other trails. So I scratched my head a little bit as to where is the balance here as to the environment and the trees, and that's what Sammamish homeowners is really concerned about. My late father had a saying for many things. One of his saying was, if the dog bites you once, it's your own fault. If the dog bites you the second time, it's your own fault. You know, you should take some action. If don't walk near that dog, don't let it happen again. Sammamish homeowners has been involved in this East Lake Sammamish Trail for many, many, many years. We saw a debacle up in the north segment as to thinking the county would be reasonable and come to terms with some that would help the homeowners, as well as taking into account the environment. And we said, okay, it didn't work there. We actually had a settlement agreement between Sammamish homeowners and the King County that seemingly is being disregarded by King County with not living up to that settlement agreement. We had made comments for the segment that's currently at 90% plan, which I just learned tonight, or I learned a couple days ago, is now planned to go to 95%. I have trouble addressing that because I don't know what the plans are yet. But we've made comments. We got responses. Sure, we got a response letter, but I'm here to tell you, and in response to your council meeting on the February 17th, you said, well, I think the citizens are being responded to. We at Sammamish homeowners, we got a letter, but the letter was non-responsive. We made points. The response was, we hear you, thanks very much, and basically we're going to do what we want to do. I think I get 5 minutes as Sammamish homeowners, correct? So I at least have 2 more minutes. So I'm here to tell you that they've been non-responsive with the comments that we've been trying to work with King County. I feel like that's the first bite. We've been trying and trying and trying to have the county consider our proposals and consider our concerns, and we keep getting ignored. So we felt like there was nothing else we could do, and we have filed a lawsuit against King County that is trying to ascertain just what are the property rights of King County and what they got from their quitclaim deed from the railroad in 1998. And in that regard, I'm not going to try the suit here tonight. It's versus the county, to be clear. But in that regard, I think the council should seek advice as to whether or not the permitting process can actually continue with that lawsuit pending as to the rights of the county that they actually have to build the trail as currently proposed, and how it impinges on the property rights that we believe the adjacent owners actually own. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Fred, is Fred Hammerquist here? Okay, then we've got an Ann and John Rohrbach, I believe, not here? Ann and John Rohrbach, not in the room? Okay, then I guess you're Melissa Grimaldi.
I am.
I know you are, actually. After Melissa, I've got those of you who signed up on the wrong list, but that's okay. I've got Don Larson, Pat and Chuck Meyer, and Kathy Schroeder. You're just watching, so none of you wish to, well. We thought that was an attendee list. Okay, well, it was a public hearing for. So let me just go through that. Don Larson, Chuck Meyer, Kathy Schroeder, John Rossi. This one's going to be hard to read. The last name is G-I-G-S, I'm not sure. Gills, maybe, or? Gills. And then I've got the Ann and John Rohrbach there, too. And then Rosalind, maybe, or Ruglin, or hard to read. None of you, anybody else who wants to speak, I guess, probably should get up there and get in line if you wish to speak tonight. So right after Melissa, anyone else who's intending to speak, give your name and address, and we'll go from there. So you're on.
Thank you, Mayor Vance and council members. My name is Melissa Grimaldi. I'm a member of the Timberline Park Homeowners Association. That's who I am representing tonight. My address is 4333 201st Place, Northeast Sammamish. The one overwhelming comments that I've heard ongoing this evening and reiterated throughout all the communities and all the speakers really addresses safety. Safety is coming through loud and clear, whether you're talking about bikers on the roads, whether you're talking about speed limits on the trail, and whether you're talking about barricade removal and roadways and safe getting on and off this plateau for both pedestrians and for those who are in motorized vehicles. Retaining the Northeast 42nd Street Emergency Opticom Aptacom Gate, pardon me, is in the best interest of 5 community neighborhoods. Those are the ones that are most directly impacted: Timberline, Timberline Park, Timberline Highlands, Waterbrook, and Hidden Ridge, as well as the general driving, bicycling, and walking public. And I apologize, I didn't get my map to you to illustrate this, but I'll make sure to email it in the future. The current neighborhood road designs from the 90 homes in Timberline Park where I live throughout Timberline to either Sahalee or more recently to Blackwell Elementary was designed and has been in effect for over 30 years. Suggesting that cars are currently being rerouted through this route, i.e. through Timberline, has been said by some outspoken individuals from Timberline, and that's flatly untrue. There is no rerouting. There is no current compromise to safety, as this route has been used safely for more than 30 years. The new Waterbrook neighborhood near the 42nd Street Aptacom Gate, which connects Timberline Park to Hidden Ridge, has to date made absolutely no impact on the safety of the existing Timberline streets because all the traffic from the new Waterbrook and those in Hidden Ridge currently cannot go through the gate. The safety of Timberline is tied directly to the safety of Timberline Park, Waterbrook, and Hidden Ridge. And with the emergency Aptacom Gate in place, neither Timberline nor Timberline Park is currently affected by any change. If the city were to unwisely remove the Aptacom emergency gate, it would in fact compromise the safety of all 5 neighborhoods by introducing new cut-through traffic that's currently on arterials that are designed for that purpose. Traffic from from State Route 202 heading to or from Sahalee Way, including commercial traffic, would be directed by current GPS to go through neighborhoods that are not designed for arterial traffic. That included those well-documented unsafe roads within the erroneous reverse camber, an error in construction that we've all agreed and often cited in the King County Hearing Examiner's report, along with many other treacherous characteristics such as 20% grades and aquifers that go across the roadway. That new Waterbrook roadway, as a result, was granted by variances that you had no control over. In summary, we want to make it abundantly clear. The current flow to Timberline Park, or from Timberline Park to Timberline, with the Aptacom emergency gate in place, retains the original design and functionality of those roadways, which have performed safely for over 30 years. Suggesting that the emergency Aptacom gate somehow needs to be removed because a 30-year-old Timberline Park connection is now currently unsafe is not only ridiculous, it's pure fiction. I want to remind the council that we have the vote of over 400 of our association members in Timberline Park, Hidden Ridge, and Waterbrook. They voted unanimously. So we encourage you to continue to gather the facts about that roadway. We thank you for the resolution that you voted on last week. We would have loved it to have a little more time frame in there that would have given it what we refer to as more teeth. Somehow in our community, there are members who feel like we've just kicked this can down the road a little bit further. Simply put, keeping the status quo by retaining the fully functional Aptacom emergency gate has been and will continue to be the best resolution to significant irresolvable safety concerns, and I do believe everyone in the community wants all of us to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're up. Name and address.
I am John Rossi. I live at 251 East Lake Sammamish Parkway Northeast.
Time is up, John.
Done. Thank you very much. Remember where I see you.
That's right. You're in trouble, yeah.
So, what I've learned from all of this, living here this long, watching that trail go through, a train coming through, having our kids go out there, putting nickels on the train or the track and having it, come through and smash them up illegally, of course. We weren't supposed to do that. To where this has ended up today, it makes me kind of frustrated. I look at a King County Parks and Recs department. And I think, how long have you been doing this? Years. You have been doing this kind of work for years. What have you learned when you come to a project like this that makes it end up with this kind of a situation? I just look back and I think, early on when this started, they wanted to pound down a 30-foot wide trail there. People that live in our area, they'll remember it was going to be a 30-foot wide, horses, buggies, whatever. We're going to go down that trail. And it was our trail. We were going to make this be a strip park, and this is what the county is going to do. Now, what do you think that's going to do to the people that live down there? It made us look really bad because it felt like we didn't want this trail. Well, of course we wanted this trail. We love this trail. That's not the kind of trail we wanted. But to me, when I look at what can we take away from this experience so that it may not happen again somewhere. It may not happen in Preston or Falls City or somewhere else that's in the county. King County, I ask you, what have you learned? Being aggressive early, that kind of behavior that friends of mine had said, a King County person, no one here tonight, came up to them and said, this is our property. Get off my property. Don't tell me what to do with my property. Okay, first of all, that's not a way to endear yourself to the public. So I hope that perhaps you've learned something with that. Unresponsiveness. Unresponsiveness gets you this. You get people that are angry. You know, King County, you've done so many fascinating things. I love the recreation and trails and stuff that you guys have worked on and done. But please take it forward. Unresponsiveness ends up getting you this kind of a behavior. And the last thing I have to say in representing or asking King County is, are you prepared to say you're sorry? Think of the people that are in the first section of this. What did they get? They got nothing. They got everything rammed down their throat, however it was going to be, and they were able to say nothing. Now, we're doing another section, and darn, we're responsive to that group of people. So you guys better have something to say to that group that you did it, you walked right over their property, in a lot of instances, create a lot of heartache for them. I'm just asking you to be prepared to say you're sorry to them. City Council, I'll make it quick. Perhaps you could have gotten involved earlier with this project. Now, this is a King County project. You shouldn't have had to have been involved if it was all done correctly. Wouldn't that have been nice? But I think you had seen somewhere early on that there were problems with this, with the way this trail was being designed and pushed down everybody's throat. Perhaps you could have gotten involved a little bit earlier. The last thing is I hope we have learned to hold King County and any other agency that we work with accountable for what they say they're going to do, like you would hold us accountable. If I wanted to build something on my property, you're going to hold me accountable to what that permit says, what the rules are, and that's just what it's going to be. So I ask you to hold King County and anybody else that you work with accountable. And finally, I would say, where would we be if you didn't jump into the fray here at this point? Would we be looking at the two other sections continuing like the first one? Would we have gotten the county to become responsive like they are now? So I do thank you for that. And I hope everybody has learned something from this experience. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
I want Dr. Rossi was also our long-term serving park commissioner. He's been the champion for our trails and the park systems here too. So when he speaks from his heart. So thank you, Doctor. Appreciate that. And we have an announcement to make though. We got some libraries about to close, and we got some cars parked in the library's parking lot. And if you want to walk to your home tonight, you can stay here. But if you want to drive, you better go get your car. Okay. So
okay, we have another speaker.
Park in library parking, get it.
Please give your name and address.
I didn't sign up. I'll make this quick.
Please give your name and address.
Greg Chapman, 2831 East Lake Sammamish Parkway, Northeast. I'd like to first say ditto. It seems that my story sounds a lot like his. I just got my driveway back today. They just poured the driveway so that I could cross it. I am part of the first segment. I'll say that I hope that the council can help with some of the efforts. I know that I was part of the settlement, and it ended up being that all of the things that I asked for that could not have been done were all part of the settlement, and luckily, through that, I was able to get some of it worked out, which costs a lot of money, time, and effort. And so by actually having the county listen to what the people in the other segments are going to have to go through, hopefully you can step in. Like I said, I've already been impacted, pretty much. And so I hope that the people in the other sections will have an opportunity to use our council to actually get to the things that would be a good negotiation, which means both parties have to give. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to speak, please? Yeah, give your name and address. Yeah, if you're parked.
No, I didn't. I had a secret parking spot. All figured out. My name is Jordan Miller, 2845 East Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast. I apologize. I wasn't expecting to speak, but I haven't heard it tonight. Appreciate everything that you guys are doing. I'm glad you're stepping in. The big topic seems to be safety, and particularly as a homeowner that's in 2B, where it intersects between my property. I'm concerned about the hours of operation and whose jurisdiction it is to govern that ruling. As far as I know, it's half hour before dawn and half hour after dusk. Who's going to enforce that? I might ask the county or the city, but you might consider some sort of gates at either end of the entrance to our city to keep those that shouldn't be using it as a nighttime trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Whoa, one more. Okay. Name and address?
Brenda Zylstra. I live at 4250 Peregrine Point Way, Southeast. So my house is just across the street from the trail, and one of my big concerns has been just trying to access the trail. You have a whole population of Sammamish citizens that live on the other side of that huge road that is being treated as a highway at this point. If you go along there at any point, it's about 50 miles an hour. That's the main traffic. I go down there with my small children, and I've attended all the trail meetings, and every time I've had a comment, it's always been, please, please, City of Sammamish, at some point, try to provide some access for the people on the other side of the road. You know, we hear a lot of arguing from, you know, the people on the water side. I understand the concern there. It's just, we would like to be able to get to it safely, and right now I can't. I have small children that have, they have training wheels, and I'm trying to dodge this street with 3 little kids, and it's just nearly impossible. They don't slow down. There are no crosswalks. And where there are crosswalks, there are no people. So you have 212th. There is nobody coming down 212th. It's illegal to come down 212th as a pedestrian or a biker. So I don't understand. They get a crosswalk, and where my street is one of the few streets where people can actually publicly park and access the trail, but there is no sidewalk, there is no crosswalk, there's nothing. So you've talked about parking lots and bathrooms and everything at very far distant parts, but please, every time I've made the comment, they say, talk to City of Sammamish. City of Sammamish is the one to talk to, so I'm asking and begging from all the people up on this other side of the hill to please consider this in your plan at some point, to do some crosswalks, possibly even some sidewalks. I know that my road at Peregrine Point, there's a crosswalk that comes or a sidewalk that comes all the way down to the East Lake Sammamish Parkway. There's about 100 feet of roadway, and then it picks up on a crosswalk where those new condos are coming in at the traffic circle. And if all they did was fill in the sidewalk piece there, we would have a safe way to get to a crosswalk to get to the trail. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, you had a comment?
I'd like to thank everybody taking the time to come to meeting tonight and to share their concerns and comments, and we really appreciate that. We heard, I think, a very enlightening public testimony. But I also want you to think that I want to thank the county folks that were here tonight. That I've been in their position as a staff member, and in the past, it is not a very pleasant to be there, sitting there patiently. And I need to share with you that my experience dealing with these individuals here has been overall very positive. They are trying to do the right things, whether it's to Kevin, whether it's Monica, whether it's Frank. These guys are trying to do their job. So I want to thank you guys again. And I encourage you to continue to work with Laura, our Public Works Director. We got to do this thing right, and we want to get this thing right. I think this could be an asset for our community, and I think our community is supportive of the trail. We just want to work this thing through our wonderful city of Sammamish. With that, I want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's take a couple minutes break, very brief, and then we've got some other business to do. Thank you. Yes, a lot of business. So.
Is your mic on?
If it's possible, I'd like to have one presentation for both items 8 and 9,
Feel
and then
free.
hold 2 separate public hearings.
Okay.
So quickly, the item before us on both 8 and 9 is related to the Inglewood neighborhood. This presentation is items you've seen before, so I'll go quickly. If there's questions, I can pause. The Inglewood neighborhood was platted in the 1800s. It doesn't have stormwater facilities, and because lands are continuing to develop within the city, there is increased pressure to develop these lots, even though they're on steeper slopes. The red outlines the area that we're talking about this evening. The road on the left side of the page is East Lake Sammamish Parkway with Inglewood Hill Road, cuts right through the middle, heading up the hill. What has happened prior to 2014 in the fall when we discussed this the first time, there are very small footprint homes, densities over 6 units per acre. Again, these are existing platted lots, and the impervious surface coverage usually ends up being over 50%. Our code allows up to 70% for small lots. And what this happens when there's no drainage facilities, there's no place for that water to go. Here's an example of redeveloped area. You can just see how dense it is without any stormwater facilities in place. We adopted an emergency ordinance in July of 2014, amended it in September. It was adopted again on February 3rd, 2014. 2015, yes, typo, thank you. The changes included in the ordinance were to reduce the threshold for drainage review from 2,000 square feet of new impervious surface to 500 square feet for the Inglewood neighborhood. What this means is if a new residential home comes in, if it was less than 2,000 square feet, we weren't even doing a drainage review per our Title 13 code. Now, there's 2 different thresholds, one for when do you review it, and 2 for when there's actually requirements applied. And the changes also apply to the existing provisions under the landslide hazard drainage area. So the area that drains to landslide hazards or is within landslide hazards, and this is defined in our code, what that area is saying that also if you're 500 square feet or more, you need to pipe the water below the landslide hazard area. The Planning Commission reviewed the work associated with the ordinance, and the education and staff overview happened on September 18th. The public hearing and deliberation happened on October 16th. The Planning Commission recommends adopting the emergency regulations as permanent and did not recommend any modifications. So what we're here tonight is asking the councils to hold a public hearing for the emergency ordinance that was adopted on February 3rd, 2015. That when we adopt emergency ordinance, we are required to, within 60 days, hold a public hearing. And then once that public hearing is closed, we are asking the council to open a public hearing for the first reading of the ordinance adopting permanent regulations for the Inglewood neighborhood area. And then presumably close the public hearing and then schedule the second reading for March 17th. Are there any
Okay,
questions?
since we're doing both 8 and 9, are there any questions for either of those issues? I guess it's too late. Councilmember Valderrama.
I'll cede to Nancy because she raised her hand before I hit my button. So
okay.
This is the thing that's come before us several times, and I assume the interested homeowners. Thank you. This has come to us for, on a couple of different occasions prior when we did the emergency ordinance. Am I correct in thinking there will be no gap by doing the emergency ordinance and then by currently adopting the permanent ones? There's not going to be any gap in where people could come in and seek permits, are there?
Correct. The emergency ordinance was readopted on February 3rd by the council and is valid for six months. And we're asking the council to do the first reading and second reading of the permanent regulations in March.
So, but between now and the 17th, when it comes back for the second reading, the emergency ordinance is still in place?
Yes.
So there's no gap. That's really what I wanted to. Has staff had any other comments on this other than what we heard at the last meeting with the emergency?
No, the only comments we received were early on when the first emergency ordinance was adopted. And the developer who actually made those comments has been working, who was concerned about it being too onerous and not being able to develop their lots. They actually have come in with a creative system and they're trying to use a water reuse system for the homes. And so we're still working with them to see if we can.
There was one lady in particular also who had 5 acres that was saying it was a real hardship on her.
Well,
oh, no, that was the
associated
tree
with tree
retention.
ordinance.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, different ordinance. Okay, thank you.
Never mind. Councilmember Valderrama.
Strike that.
following up on what Councilmember Whitten had said, I'm interested as to the number of people who went and spoke at the Planning Commission, given that this was a very volatile issue here.
Honestly, I don't know for sure. I was not in attendance for the public hearing. Our surface water, stormwater, or our stormwater program manager, Eric LaFrance, was in attendance, and his report to me was there were a few public comments, and I believe they were the same folks who testified at the original public hearing of the emergency ordinance, but I can't say that for certain.
Okay. And was it unanimous on the Planning Commission to support this?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jarrett.
Thank you. Laura, on page 2 of Exhibit 1, Attachment A of Item 9.
Which one are we looking at?
Item 9.
Okay.
Oh, item 9. No.
Exhibit 1, Attachment A. Page 2, which really is labeled page 1, is the second page 1. Excuse me. I did ask about natural discharge area. In paragraph 2, it talks about natural discharge area, and then below it, it says exception. A tight line is not required for any natural discharge location. I didn't look in our code. Are those things defined someplace in our municipal code? I mean, I don't know what a natural discharge area or location is.
Yes, it's defined in there. I don't have the definition memorized, but it is defined in the code.
So location and area, probably the same thing, I suppose, huh?
I mean, an area similar. I mean, an area could be a wetland. A location could be a specific point.
So a natural discharge area could be a wetland, could be a lake?
Yes.
Or a stream?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
not a stormwater facility?
No, that wouldn't be natural. That'd be man-made.
Right. Yeah, okay. Thank
Unless that man-made system discharged to the natural location.
Which it ultimately probably will have to.
Yes. So ultimately, when the Inglewood trunk line project is completed for that neighborhood, it will take the water from Inglewood, provide a system that discharges into Lake Sammamish. And property owners within the Inglewood neighborhood will be able to connect to that system with their water and meet the requirements of discharging their water tight line below the landslide hazard.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Then I'm going to open the public hearing for item number 8 first. This is a public hearing for emergency ordinance for historic plats and drainage concerns as referenced by ordinance 02015-387. Public hearing is open. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this issue? Not a soul. Okay, that's unusual. Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll go on to item number 9. This is.
Announce the date for March 17th. Second reading. Public hearing on permanent ordinance.
Right. So are we doing a public hearing tonight? I believe we are. Right. Okay. So I'm opening the public hearing on the public hearing and first reading of the ordinance. Let me see what it is. First reading, adopting provisions related to surface water management in the Surface Water Design Manual, and also as codified into Chapter 20 of Title 13 of the Sammamish Municipal Code. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone to speak to this issue? Okay.
Hello there. My name is Paul Stickney at 504 228th Ave Southeast. I was at the PC meeting that night. They talked about this. There were a couple people, but there weren't near as many folks as there were here at the council chambers when the first emergency ordinance was held. I do think it's a real good idea to do the stormwater for Inglewood Hill, but that's a steep slope. I've sold houses over there. There's a lot of problem. I commend the council on doing a stormwater pipe. And as you guys know, I think you know, I have a Bachelor of Science in Resource Conservation from the University of Montana, and I'm a forester. And when I first moved here in 1990 from the state of Montana, I listed a house on Inglewood Hill that had one of the true only old-growth Doug firs in Sammamish. It was about a 6-foot DBH stick. It was lovely. It was not a huge Doug fir, but it was really cool. And subsequently, somebody has cut that tree down, but it was a true old-growth tree, not second growth. There's almost no old growth in Sammamish, but there is a lot of second growth and there is a lot of third. But I love the old growth sticks. It was kind of like the size of the Ashel Curtis trees on Snoqualmie. Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak to this issue? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Anything further on that? I guess we're done. On March 17th. Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on to council reports. I'm going to do one quickly, and this is something that came up recently, so I haven't had a chance really to spend much time on it. It actually came up today. This is a request for the Sound Cities Association mayors support for an area agency on aging. This is an existing agency, for the area agency on aging. This basically supports seniors and those who are disabled, keeps them out of nursing homes, and is a great, based on the research done by the Sound Cities and with President Matt Larson, and is David the vice chair or vice president, David Baker?
No.
Well, he was on the list for this letter. They're requesting our support of this. This is just a letter to the legislature asking them to continue to fund this program. It keeps people out of nursing homes. Am I done? Is that, I gotta stop talking? Okay, sorry. If I get a head nod, you know, this is basically just ask the legislator to keep funding this great program. Like I said, it's for people who are qualified under Medicaid or people who are disabled, and kind of helps them get along and, you know, provides a lot of services. We okay with that? Yeah. Okay, I'll make sure that goes out in the morning. So that's all I have. Anyone else for Councilmember Jaron?
Thank you. Just briefly, last week I testified at the State House Transportation Committee in support of spending some money on a road usage charge pilot program.
Thank you, Don. So we're not going to get any money from state for any transportation.
Right. And also the state Senate passed out the transportation package, so it's now up to the House to pass theirs and then reconcile the differences.
Second growth roads
that
affect us.
Yeah, that's my report.
Okay, Councilmember Keller.
Just a quick comment on the PIC meeting. There's a number of issues as always going on, but one that we'll be eventually asking for support from the council on, and that's the Committee to End Homelessness. I'd sent out the draft strategic plan to the council a few weeks ago, and they asked for comments. So I followed up with some information requesting comments from the council, and I did receive some input from council members. I'm going to comment on just one of the things that I submitted to them. I submitted to the questions to the SCI on Friday. One of them had to do with, in the strategic plan, this was very contentious in PIC. It's not. This is very contentious in the PIC, and it had to do with criminalizing ordinances that criminalize homelessness. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but actually Cameron in the city of Burien is in the middle of this, where they put an ordinance together that limited access to the libraries. And that is really being discussed not only, you know, among the cities and the county, but it hit the media with their view of that. So in any case, we have questions in as to what result is there going to be and what implications that has, and I'll have more information on that later.
Just for your own information, today that was brought up at the North End Mayor's meeting, and I guess the feeling of a lot of people at SCA, according to Deanna, was that the Committee to End Homelessness, was their proposal was big on ideas, short on strategy, and maybe that's going to be one of the issues that comes up at your meeting.
Yeah, that probably will be, as it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's just complicated organization.
Okay, Councilmember Valderrama. No, I'm sorry, Councilmember Odell.
Okay. Thank you. I've got three things. First of all, on the trail issue, we had an awful lot of public involvement this evening, which is frankly capping off an awful lot of public involvement over the past several weeks on this issue. I think we have finally gained the attention of the county. And I think we're making some good progress on this. We won't please everybody, but the end result will be a lot better than it would have been if we had not jumped in. I would ask that the city manager and staff take a more active role in supervising.
You mean continue the active role?
Yes, and frankly, a few of us might want to help you on what happens with Phase 2A and also Phase 2B, because those are going to be, the latter one especially is going to be difficult. There was also a request tonight to say you're sorry to the people in the North End as well. And I think that at some point in time there needs to be a discussion with the county on whether or not some of the things that were done up there that seriously impact people can be
Undone.
remedied somehow. So I'd like for us all to keep that on our radar screens. But again, I want to thank Kevin for walking the trail with me, and I learned a lot, and I think he gets some good ideas too. Next week or later this week, Councilmember Jarrett and I will be leaving for Washington, D.C. to attend the National League of Cities meeting. We both have committee meetings on Sunday, and then there's the Western Municipal Association meeting on Monday that are of particular interest to the both of us. Finally, the Kokanee release, the annual Kokanee release, this is the 6th one, Kokanee Fire release, is scheduled for Friday, April 24th from noon to 2. This year will be at the Hans Jensen area of Lake Sammamish State Park, further down the parkway, but across the Issaquah line. Wally Perea, who's been so good about hosting this event in the past, has reached a point in the rework of his property that would be a serious inconvenience for him to accommodate this year, so we are going to be moving it. Blackwell Elementary will again be participating with one of their classes, so we'll be taking a few Sammamish kids across the line in Issaquah for the fire release. That's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Valderrama.
What about me?
I can ask. Thank you. Yes, first of all,
You what? We're supposed to do it. We go in order usually for council reports.
So push your button.
But I mean, usually we go down the row.
Well, we haven't.
We're not
today.
doing
We didn't.
that?
We started with Don. We went to Tom, and
Oh,
so
okay.
you'll come up.
I just assumed it.
come on. I'm at bat. Okay. First of all, I attended the Citizens for Sammamish meeting on Monday, yesterday, and while there was a lot of discussion about the barricades and the trail, one issue that was raised there and is of concern, given some of the comments made by Mr. Hornish this evening, is given that these suits are in, I'd be interested on the city coming back to us and addressing questions of how do we proceed when ownership and use of the trail is in question. So at some point, I'd like to see a response on that. Following up on what Council Member Odell had mentioned out there, it is good that we've got the attention of the county, that they've come out here and they've talked. There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. We need to get the dates of when those questions will be answered, and we need to hold them accountable for what they are doing down there and to make sure that they are complying. I was disappointed that the comments, responses to the citizens was not shared with the citizens. I think it would have been a much richer conversation this evening. I would hope that we quickly get that out to them so that they can respond to the city's comments as well as their own that are still outstanding in most of the cases. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. My bad. On Eastside Fire and Rescue tomorrow, I will have to leave the retreat exercise around 7 o'clock. And so I would ask that we allow Don Juran, who will be attending, to be able to step in my place for the Eastside Fire if no one has any opposition. Thanks.
No way. No. It's all right. Okay, Councilmember Witten.
Couple of things on the barricade. I've had some conversations with neighbors of the barricade, and they're not real happy about how we handled it. But I would like clarification on exactly what happened at the last meeting. Several people have raised comments. Well, what was the resolution we passed? Did we amend it? Did we not amend it? How did we give our direction to the city staff to come back to us with some possible ways of looking into the issue further? So I would at some point in time like a staff report on that, and through minutes of the meeting or otherwise have clarification for both the council and for the neighborhoods. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the trail. I was very pleased the county came out and that they're demonstrating some flexibility. I still think I agree with Mr. Hamilton. There's a long way to go and a long road to hoe with the third phase not yet before us. So I hope staff is vigilant. I would especially like Mr. Brown from the county mentioned that he has, that his staff have meetings with our staff every 2 weeks. I'd like a report, a detailed report on what happens at those meetings, come to council and be made part of the record. So I hope we get some better communication going and in terms of informing us of the details of what's happening, not just to give us general reports. That's my report.
Okay. I guess that's it. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I know it's time late. We have also executive session, so I'm going to be very brief. I wasn't at this meeting that when the council discussed the barricades, and also there was a discussion about having a meeting with the county elected officials. So I want to talk about those two because they're not clear from at least from the parts of the meeting that I listened to. Barricades, you passed the resolution, and there was also some sort of a request to do some study, but the timing of that study wasn't clear. Hoping that you weren't assuming that we would just immediately jump on the study, and if that's your intent, I need to bring back to you our workload. You need to take some stuff off the list so we can put that on the list. I need you to reprioritize what we're doing here. So my suggestion to you, however, you made the resolution, you passed the resolution, this is what the community was asking, hold back on the study. We got no resources right now on the staff time. I mean, we have to hire a consultant, but consultant still needs to be managed by the staff here.
There was discussion about this biennium as opposed to the next.
So is the council okay with doing that study next biennium?
No.
Yes. Okay. So those of you who are saying yes, please raise your hand so we know how many of you doing the study next biennium, not now.
I wonder if I could have a little discussion before we actually have the vote.
Could we do it at another night? It's really late, and
So let's do that next week.
can we put it on the agenda for
Put it
next
on
week?
for next week.
Well, next week we'll be missing 2 people, not just 1.
We'll do it March 17th when we're doing our
Well, we can do it
voting.
then.
Okay.
It's not going to be an issue.
That's
It's going to
fine.
be
I
fine.
mean, there's no rush since
That's
we,
right.
I'm glad to hear there's no rush.
unfortunately, well, there's no rush in deciding this one because it's been buried by what happened last week.
Now, there was another second issue. Mr.
Second
City.
issue is related to, there was a request, a motion to have a meeting with the county. Unfortunately, the motion, when I listened carefully, it was very specific individuals requested in that motion. County executive and the 2 county council members, they were named on that one. My suggestion to you that if you want us to have a meeting, let's just not name the individuals. Let's figure out a way to get the one maybe perhaps from legislative branch and the one from executive branch. Because if you name a specific person with their calendars, our calendars, it would be impossible to set those meetings up. So currently, I can't follow through with that the council action, partly because one of the individuals that you had put in that specific motion is on vacation and will not be available till April 6th. Follow up to that, given what the report that we got from the county today, given the letter that the executive sent to our mayor, I suggest that we wait till 95% design to see how responsive the county is being, and then to set the meeting. That will be most effective and appropriate at that time, especially if we see that there's problems still that needs to be addressed, because between 95% and 100%, we have no time. So this will be our one best shot to set that meeting up.
Any thoughts?
Everybody's okay with that?
Councilmember Odell, you had something to say?
I concur with what the city manager is recommending. I think we're a little premature on asking for Dow Constantine to come and the other people that were mentioned. What we have here today is, I think, a good faith effort on the part of the county to make up for some of the difficulties we've had with them in the past. I would like to see the 95% plan before I press the nuclear launch button on this one.
Councilmember Keller.
I would agree. I think that the 95% is a good idea before we actually set up a meeting, but I would want to add a caveat or a qualification on that is I think Councilmember Witten was asking for some status reports in between. If we could have, you know, some active process that shows communication outside of the one that you're setting up at the 95%, that would really be helpful.
Sure. We'll try to provide that report.
Detailed.
Councilmember.
Detail, Nancy, you're saying detail. Do you want me to start talking about the station 185 slope 2% going there east? I mean, is that what you want the council to spend that time? I think the issue is, how do we solve the citizens' concern? How do we get this through it? We have some citizens' comments were sent. They were not responded. I want to make sure they're being responded. City comments were not being responded. They were not being responded. We got some wetland issues. How do we mitigate it? What mitigations opportunities are being discussed? Those are the things that I think we should be spending our time. Then the technical details of that, what the ex-engineer did on the what slope and what grade and what the thickness of the pavement is.
I want to know what...
I need a direction from council, so
well,
do you want what Nancy wants me to provide, or
you mischaracterized what I want. I want to know what the citizen concerns are and how they're being addressed. And if there's detailed solutions to those, I'm hoping that we will have that either through the type of thing we got as of last Friday, summarizing the spreadsheet with that kind of detailed information. I don't care about the engineering thing so much.
All right, then we're on the same page.
As I want to know what the citizens' concerns are, how the county's proposing to fix them, and what the city's position is if they're different, or some comments on those items, and if the citizen is happy. If the citizen isn't happy,
I can't tell you citizens are happy.
Well,
I can only tell you what's the written records and what the county is going to
but if
process
it's still a continuing concern, then I'd like to know that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, you know, something along those lines, whatever you think is appropriate, but not just a summary that the sun is shining.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
First of all, I would accept the changing of personnel given the obligations of the key person in there to be out to have legislative with executives as can go forward. I would prefer to have one meeting before the 95% plan. I disagree with the good faith comment or last time's comment of give them the benefit of the doubt, given what happened in section 1 out there. And having looked at the table to the city comments, I thought it was pretty sparse in some of the details and did not respond in a number of them. I would also support Councilmember Witten's request for a spreadsheet of the citizens' comments so we can see the detail, at least at one level, of what's being told to them as we go forward here. So,
I need a direction from council, Mr. Mayor.
There's two issues. One, can we replace the individuals, and the other one, the timing.
Well, I think, you know, you can ask the county executive to come all you want. He'll probably send someone else.
No, but that's the replacing. That's the first one. Is
Okay.
we're able to move someone from
does anybody have any problem with getting the best available people to the meeting?
No.
Well, Councilmember Jarrett?
Well, what are we going to accomplish at the meeting that we're not accomplishing with the staff to staff and reports back to us from the staff? I think the process we've got set up is going to work.
What I had talked about is I think the staff have been usually working very well. The disconnect has been with the citizens and our representative elected officials getting on the same board. having had those conversations with Fred Jarrett, that I think that's starting to come in, but to make sure that we are on the same level as to the guidance that staff to staff is given.
But Nancy's suggestion of the guidance and the reports back addresses the citizens' comments and how they're being addressed. If we don't feel that we're getting those answers, then we can sit down with the electeds. That's my feeling.
Is there some consensus on that?
I would agree with that.
Don? Okay.
All right, so message, we get you the detailed report so to provide you feedbacks, and we will let you know that also if there's any problem along the way that we're unable to handle it. We can raise the flagpole to let you know that you need to jump in with the elected officials at that time too. Thank you. That answers my question.
Mr. City Manager, how long are we expecting?
Probably, let's start with the 45 minutes, Mr. Mayor, and there will be action.
Can we have a motion to extend the meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I move to extend the meeting to 11 o'clock.
45 minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed?
And Mr. Mayor, the purpose of the executive session is both litigation and also
Potential litigation and property sale, I believe.
Sale or purchase, right?
Yeah. Real estate property.
Right.
No. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Question of killing time.
Right. Okay, do we have everyone here? Almost?
Almost. You got a quorum.
We do have one action. Do I have a motion? This is a motion authorizing the city manager to sign the conservation easement on parcel 182.506-9074, restricting the use of the parcel to open space under perpetuity. I always have trouble with that word. And to execute all documents necessary to finalize the sale of parcel 182.506-9074 for $170,000 pursuant to the terms of the purchase and sale agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Question. That purchase and sale agreement is subject to the conservancy easement that we're creating?
There is an easement, yeah. It says, I just
Okay.
made the motion. It includes the easement. Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.